There used to be a real oasis in the desert along the border between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. It was once the fourth largest lake in the world by area, 2 times as big as the entire country of Belgium. For thousands of years, it was home to freshwater fish and fed thousands of families who worked in the fishing industry. I'm talking about the Aral Sea. And now, it's all gone. Not dried a little bit, gone. The water retreated so far that ships now sit stranded in deserts, and their rusting hulls are half buried in sand. Villages that once relied on fishing now choke on dust storms made of salt and pesticide residue. It's like someone took the sea, crumpled it up, and tossed it into history. The worst part is that this wasn't a drought or some natural climate shift. This was all us humans. The land around the Aral Sea was always dry and harsh, but the sea held everything together. 2 great rivers fed it, and as long as they flowed freely, the Aral stayed steady. But then in the 1960s, the officials with big plans and even bigger ambitions decided to turn deserts into farmland and prove that human will could reshape nature itself. Engineers began siphoning water from both rivers for massive irrigation projects. By the time farmers were watering their parched fields, the Aral Sea was already bleeding out. Each canal carved from the rivers was like another cut. The flow weakened, the summers got hotter, and the water disappeared faster than anyone expected. And here's the tragic punchline. Those grand irrigation systems didn't even work properly. Somewhere between 25% and 75% of all the diverted water didn't reach the crops at all and just evaporated into thin air before it ever hit the soil. By the 1980s, both rivers were drying up completely in the hottest months. The Aral Sea's balance shattered, the water levels plummeted, and what remained became too salty for fish to survive. The once bustling fishing communities were wiped off the map. Within just 30 years, the massive inland lake had split into 2. In the early 2000s, Kazakhstan decided to fight back, or at least save what was left. They built the Koch-Aral Dike and Dam to trap the remaining water in the northern basin instead of letting it flow south and vanish. The northern part of the Aral Sea started to refill. Fish began to return, but the victory was only partial. To the south and east, the vast basin that once teemed with water and life kept fading away. By 2014, satellite images showed the eastern part completely dry, gone. For the first time in 600 years, the Aral Sea ceased to exist as a true sea. The salt from the exposed seabed of the Aral Sea poisoned farmland for miles, ruined water supplies, and spread lung and kidney disease across entire regions. The fishing towns lost everything, and that is the story we keep repeating. Over and over. We push, but then nature pushes back, even harder. There's another body of water with a tragic story a few thousand miles away. Lake Chad in Central Africa. Once, it was one of the largest lakes on Earth. Fishermen crossed it by boat, herders watered their animals, and entire economies depended on it. But it has shrunk by around 90% since the 1960s. How did it happen? Same pattern. Humans diverted its inflowing rivers for farming and irrigation. Again, for crops meant to make money fast. Combine that with some changes in climate conditions and a few decades of bad management, and poof. A lake the size of the entire country of Rwanda turned into cracked mudflats. The tragedy doesn't end with the water. When the lake vanished, livelihoods went with it. People started fighting over what was left. Grazing land, wells, fish, and that tension helped fuel conflicts between 30 million people living in the region. Now, let's jump to 2023. You might have seen it in the news for a day or two, but then it vanished from the headlines. The city of Derna, Libya, is gone, washed away. There were 2 dams upstream from the city, both built in the 1970s. They were meant to control floods, back when people still maintained them. But then came years of conflicts, corruption, and neglect. Engineers knew that the dams were cracked, but nobody fixed them. Then, Storm Daniel hit. It was a monster of a storm, supercharged by a warming Mediterranean. The rain poured for hours, the reservoirs filled up, and those neglected dams just gave up. Two walls of water went roaring through the valley in the middle of the night. It tore through Derna like a super powerful bulldozer. Entire neighborhoods were swept into the sea, and more than 10,000 people vanished in a single night. And probably the saddest part is that everyone knew this could happen. It was just a matter of when. If that sounds creepy and tragic, how about a horror movie set in real life? This is Centralia, Pennsylvania. Population 0, or close enough. It used to be a bustling coal town full of miners, families, diners, and little brick houses. Then one day in 1962, as the main theory says, someone decided to burn trash in an old pit. Nothing unusual, except that pit connected to a maze of coal tunnels underground. The fire spread down into the mines and it never stopped burning. Let me say that again. It's still burning. The ground itself is on fire. You can walk through Centralia today and see steam seeping out of cracks in the road, and the air is hot and metallic. The ground is unstable and it can just open up and swallow you. The authorities bought out the town in the 1980s, evacuated everyone, and bulldozed the houses. And yet, all of this was preventable. If anyone had sealed the mine shafts properly, monitored gas levels, or just taken the risk seriously, Centralia might still exist. Instead, it's a ghost town on fire. A literal warning that we don't always need nature to burn us. We can do it ourselves just fine. Another crazy thing humans have mastered is starting earthquakes. If you don't trust me, meet Pawnee, Oklahoma. On September 3, 2016, at 7:02 a.m., a 5.8 magnitude earthquake hit. The strongest ever recorded in the state. People's walls cracked, furniture toppled, and for a moment, Oklahoma felt like California. But Oklahoma isn't supposed to have earthquakes that big. So, what happened? The answer lies underground, in the wastewater disposal wells from fracking operations. When companies extract oil and gas using hydraulic fracturing, they pump millions of gallons of water and chemicals deep into the ground. The leftover fluid, contaminated and pressurized, has to go somewhere, so they inject it into deep wells. Those injections increase pressure along old fault lines and eventually snap. The earth literally moves. It's not like anyone was surprised either. Scientists warned about it for years. Oklahoma went from averaging 2 noticeable earthquakes a year to more than 900 by 2015. And yet, permits for new wells kept rolling in. If there's one thread through all these stories, it's this. Every disaster had a warning label. The RLC didn't dry up overnight. Derna's dams didn't crack in secret. Centralia's fires started with a match we lit. We saw it coming. We just didn't want to stop. And have you noticed how fire season doesn't really end anymore? California, Australia, Greece, take your pick. Wildfires are bigger, faster, and harder to stop every year. And no, it's not just the weather. Take a century of deforestation, mix in sprawling suburbs built right next to forests, and top it off with electrical lines and dry grass. You get a firestorm waiting for a spark, and that spark is usually human too. While some places are on fire, others are sinking, literally. In places like Indonesia, overpumping groundwater for cities and industries is making entire coastal areas sink. Jakarta, for example, is going down so fast it might become uninhabitable in a few decades. And yet, new buildings keep going up. Maybe it's greed. Maybe it's short-term thinking. Maybe we just believe nature will keep forgiving us. But one day, we'll realize forgiveness isn't infinite. There's a country that runs on volcanoes, rivers, and lakes for power. Sounds like a fantasy game setting, but it's all true. Welcome to New Zealand. This island nation already gets about 85% of its electricity from renewable resources like hydro, geothermal, and wind. That's impressive, but it's actually just getting started. Now, let's zoom in on a place called the South Taranaki Bight. It's a stretch of sea off the west coast of the North Island. At first glance, it looks just like any other tropical postcard location, but it's hiding New Zealand's clean energy jackpot. It's all about the South Taranaki offshore wind project. This game changer in the world of green power will build wind turbines in the ocean, enough to generate almost 1 gigawatt of clean electricity. That's roughly enough to power over 430,000 homes. To put that into perspective, that's almost a quarter of all the households in New Zealand. If the country can pull this off, it won't just become greener. It'll kickstart an entirely new profitable industry: offshore wind. It means over 600 new jobs in construction, operations, and maintenance, and these jobs are future-proof. The kind that won't disappear as the world moves away from oil and gas. It also means more tech development for the country, and of course, more energy independence. Experts also believe it will secure more business investment in New Zealand, and the entire offshore wind sector should bring in around $30 billion to the country's GDP between now and 2050. The South Taranaki Bight is a perfect location for this project. It gets consistent, powerful winds, not stormy and chaotic, but steady and useful. That's exactly what you want for wind turbines. And the seabed here is deep, but not too deep, which is ideal for turbine platforms. They usually build traditional wind turbines on land or in shallow water where they can stand on firm foundations. But the ones planned here are offshore wind turbines, which means engineers can install them in deeper water, further from land, and in stronger wind zones. The electricity the turbines generate will move to a major onshore connection point through cables. From there, it will travel via national grid infrastructure to power homes, businesses, and industry. To make all this happen, the project team has already laid the groundwork. One of the coolest things they've done so far is a floating LiDAR campaign. LiDAR means light detection and ranging. And it's like radar, but with lasers. They put this high-tech gear on a floating buoy that stays in the ocean for months. It collects crazy precise data about wind speeds, wave patterns, sea temperature, currents. That's all the stuff you need to plan an offshore power plant. If the project works out, it will take New Zealand to a new green level. Right now, the country still uses fossil fuels during peak demand times, or when the hydro lakes run low. Most of those fossil fuels come from overseas, and they're expensive, polluting, and unreliable. But if offshore wind goes big, it could plug those energy gaps, especially during winter when winds are stronger and electricity use spikes. And if New Zealand produces more clean energy than it needs, it could start exporting it as green hydrogen. It's hydrogen made from water using renewable electricity, which is really healthy for our planet. The South Taranaki offshore wind project, if all goes well, will be more than a local win. It'll be a blueprint, a model other regions of New Zealand could follow. There are wind-rich areas all around the country's coastline, and floating offshore technology makes them more accessible than ever. Some scientists believe New Zealand could build up to 8 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2050. That's 8 times what's being planned in Taranaki right now. Imagine what that could do. Clean energy for the whole country, plus exports, plus global leadership in a brand new industry. Of course, it's not all smooth sailing, and there are some challenges on the way. First, there's marine life. Any large ocean project needs to be careful about how it affects whales, dolphins, fish, and seabirds. That's why scientists are studying marine baseline in the early planning stages to map out the local ecosystem and avoid any harm to it. They've already started this process in the Taranaki Bight and are gathering information so turbines can be placed where they'll do the least damage. There's also a high cost. Offshore wind is more expensive than onshore right now, but costs are dropping as the tech improves and scales up. Plus, the long-term benefits, cleaner air, local jobs, energy security, make it worth it. And then there are potential problems with authorities, local tribes, iwi, and the community. They all must support the project for it to become a reality, and it's not always working out. For example, When a 34-page review article about the risks of the wind farms for the environment came out, local authorities were reviewing it. But if everything goes well, construction in the South Taranaki Bight could begin in the late 2020s. Iceland is a great example of a country where green, renewable energy works and rules. 9 out of 10 homes in this country stay warm thanks to underground geothermal heat. Thanks to its wild geology with volcanoes, hot springs, and glaciers, Iceland is packed with natural energy. It sits right on a super active part of the Earth's crust, where 2 tectonic plates meet. That's why it has so much geothermal power and hot water just bubbles up from below. Glaciers cover 11% of the country, and when they melt in the warmer months, they feed rivers that flow down from the mountains. That water's energy is turned into hydropower. Plus, Iceland also has lots of wind power potential. They just haven't tapped into it much yet. The only major thing still using fossil fuels in Iceland is transport, like cars and planes. But it wasn't always this way. Not long ago, Iceland relied mostly on imported oil and coal, especially before the 1970s. Back then, they mostly used geothermal energy for bathing and washing clothes. The change came when oil prices went up like crazy, and Iceland realized importing fuel was just too risky and expensive. The country needed its own stable, affordable energy. One farmer figured out how to use natural hot water to heat his home. Local communities followed his lead, and soon towns were drilling deeper underground to get even hotter water. That hot water then went through pipes around neighborhoods and heated entire towns. It worked so well that the authorities set up a special fund to give out loans for geothermal drilling. Others started building small hydro plants. By 1950, Iceland had over 500 tiny hydropower stations powering farms and villages. Later, the authorities stepped in again to attract big international companies. If Iceland could offer cheap green power, maybe new industries would move in, create jobs, and help grow the economy. That plan worked, and it also helped build a country-wide power grid. And it was all possible, not just because Iceland has amazing natural resources, but also thanks to teamwork of the authorities and regular citizens. A lot of countries today face the same problems. Nepal, for example, has tons of hydropower potential, but needs investment. Countries in East Africa have loads of underground geothermal energy, but not enough training or tech to use it. Iceland has been sharing what they know for decades. Since 1979, over 1,000 people from other countries have gone there to study geothermal energy. Icelandic companies have helped build geothermal systems in more than 50 countries, including the world's biggest one in China, which now heats homes for over 1 million people. And you don't even need volcanoes to use geothermal energy. New technology means you can use lower temperatures to heat and cool buildings. Paris, for example, has one of Europe's largest geothermal heating systems. Around 25% of Europeans live in places where this tech could work.
So a few years ago, in 2019, folks in Australia said they liked an old idea with a new twist, using extra floodwater from the north to help dry areas in the west and south. This plan got the name of the New Braunfeld Scheme. It was based on an old idea from the 1930s. The idea was to catch floodwater from the north and move it to the south and west. But the original plan never actually happened. Over the years, lots of experts said it wouldn't work. They thought it was too expensive and too tricky to build, even though it could potentially help fix drought problems in dry parts of Queensland. The original idea appeared a long time ago, when an engineer named John Braunfeld got a big idea. He wanted to take floodwater from rivers in northern Queensland and send it inland to Lake Erie, one of the driest spots in Australia. He planned to use dams, pumps, really big pipes, and even tunnels to transport all that water over the Great Dividing Range, a big mountain range in Australia. The biggest dam would have been called Hell's Gate, and Braunfeld wanted it twice as tall as what it was originally planned. This way, pumps and gravity could help move the water over the Great Dividing Range. The water would then flow south and help irrigate farmland near places like Hughenden. It would change the weather, make it rain more, and turn the dry land into green farms. Eventually, it would reach Lake Erie, turning the desert into a green growing area. That way, Australia could grow more food, sell it to other countries, and make more jobs. He hoped that the area could turn into a food bowl for the country. For some time, people talked about the plan a lot. They loved the idea. They thought it could change how farming worked. And some even believed that nature had already planned for the land to be filled with water. Dry rivers and lake beds were just waiting to be used. They even said that rains fell on the wrong side of the mountains, and Brandfield's plan could fix that. But when the authorities looked into this idea, they found big problems. And the main one was that the plan would cost too much. Plus, there weren't enough scientists or engineers to do a full investigation. The land was too dry and harsh. No one was sure it would even work, like how much water would really get there. Plus, some of Brandfield's measurements were wrong, especially the dam heights. So, in 1947, they officially shut the project down, claiming that even if they built the project, it wouldn't be worth it. After all, even places next to oceans, like parts of Chile, still stay bone dry, so a big lake might not result in more rain. And still, in 2019, one political party brought the idea back with an updated version called the new Brandfield scheme. They wanted to try it again, but with some changes to make it work better. Their plan included the following steps. Take water from the South Johnstone, Tully, Herbert, and Burdekin rivers. Store that water using a big dam called Hell's Gate Dam, but this time they wanted to make the dam twice as tall as in the original plan. Let the water flow through tunnels using gravity instead of using lots of pumps. Move the water under the mountains and into the Warrego River in southern Queensland. Use the water to grow crops in dry places south and west of Hughenden, a huge area even bigger than Tasmania, eventually turning it into a food bowl. At the same time, they didn't say how much the whole project would cost, but they promised to spend $20 million to let Australia's National Science Agency check if the plan could work. Those innovative ideas sounded good, but for over 80 years, loads of experts kept saying, "Nope, it won't work." Why? Brandfield said his idea would cost £40 million back in 1941. That's about $3.2 billion today. But the new version of the plan might cost more than $15 billion and take over 10 years to build. Also, people who care about nature are worried. They explain that taking water away from where it usually goes could hurt animals and plants. It might let invasive plants and animals spread to new places. It might mess up rivers and oceans, where fish and other animals live. It could even hurt towns and businesses near the coast that depend on those natural water flows. Still, some people really believed in the idea and thought it was worth doing, especially to help farmers and fix drought problems. However, in 2022, the government decided to stop trying to fix the drought in western Queensland with the Brandfield scheme. Experts looked closely at the plan and said it just wouldn't work. The problem? There's not enough water all the time to make it happen. Apparently, the new cost of the plan would have been over $30 billion. That's a huge amount of money. You could buy yourself a fleet of private jets and luxurious yachts, and more. So experts said you'd need lots and lots of water to spend that kind of money, but the water just isn't there. Now, instead of one huge project, they suggested doing smaller water projects closer to where the rain and waterfalls are. These smaller projects, called mini Brandfield grids, would be in 4 places along the Queensland coast. Those little grids could share water when some places had more or less rain. Other scientists looked at the plan too, and they agreed. Even if things went super well, the Brandfield scheme would still cause problems and cost way too much, while the mini water grids project looks more plausible. They think the dry parts west of the mountains will do better without the full-scale Brandfield scheme. There are easier and cheaper ways to help those places grow and get water. So the big plan was dropped, and now they're looking at smarter, smaller ideas to help with water and farming. And the matter is quite urgent. Australia is a super dry place, one of the driest places people actually live in. When there's a drought, there's not much water around. That means farms don't grow as much food, and that can cause a lot of problems. In the future, droughts are likely to happen more often and be worse. That's why it's necessary to start getting ready now. Experts are working on something called the Drought Resilience Mission, trying to figure out how to deal with droughts better in the future. One of them looked at how much droughts actually cost Australia. His research shows that droughts can hurt a lot of things – farms, jobs, towns, and even the whole country. When there's no rain for a really long time, some towns can actually run out of water. That's called day zero. It's when the taps in people's houses get turned off because there's just no water left. In 2020, a town in Queensland called Stanthorpe hit day zero. About 50 other towns were really close too. When such a situation happens, the only way to get water is by bringing it in with trucks, and that's super expensive. Stanthorpe had to get around 20 trucks of water every day for a year and a half. It cost them about $800,000 every month. In the end, they spent over $14 million just to have water. Luckily, it started raining again and filled the dams back up. But the authorities are working on ways to stop this kind of thing from happening again. They want to help towns be ready so they never run out of water like that. Because drought just doesn't mess with water, it can also mess with people's health. When everything dries up, plants vanish and the soil gets loose. Then the wind picks it up and makes huge dust storms. Those dust clouds can blow really far, even into such big cities as Sydney. That's what happened in 2018. The air got so bad that kids, older people, and anyone with breathing problems had to be extremely careful. The dust ruined some crops and made different foods, even fruit, unsafe to eat.
You're standing in the middle of a vast, empty desert in Saudi Arabia. But in the middle of that emptiness, two enormous mirrored skyscrapers rise side by side, in perfect parallel to each other. This isn't just some sci-fi concept, it's the line, the centerpiece of Saudi Arabia's boldest urban project yet. Now, Saudi Arabia is already home to some of the most ambitious architecture in the world, from Riyadh's King Abdullah Financial District to the iconic Abraj Al Bayt Towers in Mecca. They've been working hard for years. But the line is in a league of its own. This project was announced in 2021, and it is part of a larger vision for the country's future called NEOM, a $500 billion megaproject designed to redefine how people live, work, and interact with the environment. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Well, I don't know, but Nadmi Al Nasser, the longtime chief executive of the ambitious project, has recently departed. Suspicious. Even more so because NEOM's statement issued soon after did not give any plausible reason for his departure. Then, the line project itself was originally expected to cost around $200 billion. But by 2024, that number had skyrocketed to a mind-blowing $2 trillion. That's about twice Saudi Arabia's entire GDP. And if you ask independent experts, they think it could end up costing even more. At first, the plan was to build about 10 miles of the project and have 1.5 million people living there by 2030. By now, the expectations are way more modest. Only just under 1.5 miles are likely to be done by 2030, with fewer than 300,000 residents. The project has come across a lot of problems along the way. Engineering issues and management problems have caused major delays, and progress hasn't been as fast as hoped. And now, let's figure out what exactly is the line. It's a literal city made up of two parallel skyscrapers, each towering 1,640 feet high. That's higher than almost all the tallest skyscrapers in the world. These skyscrapers are 656 feet wide and stretch for a mind-boggling 106 miles across the northwest of Saudi Arabia, right near the Red Sea. The most astounding thing? The entire city is actually within this one structure. There are no cars, no roads, no emissions. But we'll go into detail a bit later. The complex is supposed to house 9 million people, and all of this running entirely on clean energy. Such a project aligns perfectly with Saudi Arabia's ambitious Vision 2030 plan. The outside of the skyscrapers will be covered in mirrors that will reflect the surrounding desert landscape, creating an almost seamless blend between the city and its surroundings. Inside, there will be lush parks, cascading waterfalls, flying taxis, and even robot helpers to take care of everyday tasks. They're also planning to make an artificial moon as part of the city's design. One more thing that makes the line so unique is its design. Unlike traditional cities that spread out horizontally, the line is vertical. Everything, homes, offices, parks, schools, shopping centers, are stacked on top of each other in layers. This means that residents won't need to travel long distances to get what they need. In fact, the designers promise that all amenities will be within a 5-minute walk from anywhere in the city. And while it's compact in width, the city's vertically layered structure means it can comfortably fit all 9 million residents, while leaving plenty of room for parks, natural spaces, and modern conveniences. There's even a plan for year-round climate control, keeping both indoor and outdoor spaces at comfortable temperatures, no matter how harsh the desert weather gets. Of course, even with everything close by, people will still need to get around the city. Worry not. The line has it covered in the most futuristic way possible. It features a high-speed train system that will travel from one end of the city to the other in just 20 minutes. That's 106 miles in 20 minutes with only 4 stops along the way. Imagine being able to get anywhere in the city faster than you could drive across town in most places today. Besides the train, the line will also have autonomous vehicles. Those will be cars and shuttles driving themselves with the help of advanced technology. They will handle everything from parking to going around obstacles. Even cooler, in the line, every car, train, and any other piece of infrastructure will be connected in a huge network called the Internet of Things. Sensors and real-time data will allow traffic to flow smoothly, preventing delays and reducing congestion. They first spoke about the NEOM project in 2017. Besides the line, NEOM is supposed to include an octagon-shaped floating industrial city and a posh mountain ski resort. There, Saudi Arabia will host the Asian Winter Games in 2029. Plus, there will be the world's largest green energy plant, which will make the region self-sufficient and sustainable. The goal of NEOM is to attract people from around the world, not just to visit, but to live there. Residents will even be given their own identity, Neomians. Not everyone thinks this construction is a good idea. Some urban planners and architects have pointed out pretty big flaws in the city's straight-line layout. You see, in a regular city like Johannesburg, which covers way more ground than the line, 2 random people are usually only about 20 miles apart. But in the line, the average distance between 2 random people would be 35 miles. That's almost double, even though the line's overall area is way smaller. This setup could make it harder for people to connect socially and might be a pain to navigate, even with a high-speed train zipping through it. Now, they promise that every resident will have everything they need within a 5-minute walk, but there are doubts too. People wonder if living in a super compact, stacked-up design might end up feeling claustrophobic or even too much to handle. As for the whole mirrored exterior idea, it looks pretty cool in renderings. But there's an opinion it could actually mess with the environment. Reflecting all that sunlight in a desert might disturb local wildlife or create unexpected heat issues. The line's high-tech features sound amazing, but they come with their own set of headaches. The city is supposed to run on the Internet of Things tech and autonomous vehicles. Sounds awesome, right? But how are they going to pull that off for a 106-mile-long city? For things to run smoothly, every piece of tech, cars, trains, infrastructure, needs to be perfectly in sync, sharing tons of real-time data. If there's even a tiny glitch, it could throw a wrench into daily life for millions of people. Then there's that high-speed train. It does sound like a dream, but actually building and keeping it running in the middle of a desert is not so easy. The heat, shifting sands, and wear and tear on the tracks could cause big delays and rack up costs pretty quickly. People around the world are questioning if the line is even doable. The first inhabitants were supposed to start living there by 2030, but there are reports about scaling the project back, so that deadline feels like a big stretch. There's also a sustainability issue. The line is supposed to have zero emissions and 100% clean energy. But building something so massive is bound to take tons of resources. With all these challenges, Saudi Arabia is looking into new ways to fund the line and figure out which parts of their Vision 2030 projects to prioritize. An insider has recently said that some projects might go ahead as planned, while others could be delayed or scaled down. This lines up with what Ali Shahabi, who's on NEOM's advisory board, has said. He admitted that the Vision 2030 goals were always meant to be super ambitious, like almost too ambitious. But he argued that even if they only pull off part of it in time, it'll still be a big deal. For eons, the Red Sea has separated the continents of Asia and Africa. They're close enough to wave at each other, but far enough that moving between them requires planning. Ferries do the job, but it's time for something better. That's why engineers have envisioned an ambitious mega-project of tunnels and bridges that will not only link the two continents, but also reshape the region forever. Millions of years ago, the Arabian landmass slowly drifted away from Africa, opening a watery scar that we now call the Red Sea. This place is famous for its crystal-clear water that looks filtered even when it isn't, as well as for coral reefs that seem to be painted by an overachieving artist. Let's zoom in on one specific location, the Strait of Tiran. Every ship headed toward the upper ports squeezed through this one busy hallway. On the one side is Egypt, the Sinai Peninsula, rugged, golden, and sprinkled with resort towns. On the other side, it's Saudi Arabia, the Tabuk coast, where quiet desert hills stroll right down to neon blue water. The distance between them looks tiny on a map, almost like someone forgot to connect the lines. That's because the strait is only about 8 miles from peninsula to peninsula, close enough that on a clear day you can sometimes see the opposite shoreline. It's a busy gateway, and it's the exact gap designers want to turn into a direct road and rail link. So what are they actually trying to build? The idea is to create one continuous route between the Sinai Peninsula and the Tabuk coast. Engineers are still deciding whether it should be a bridge, a tunnel, or a hybrid, the combination of two. The problem is under the water. Near the shore, the bottom is shallow enough to support strong columns, but as you move farther out, the seabed drops quickly until it reaches about 900 feet. It's almost like walking off an underwater cliff. That sudden plunge is too deep for standard bridge supports. The design has to adjust to the landscape instead of forcing one shape across the whole gap. If they go with a bridge, the builders would place huge steel tubes called caissons on the seafloor. Think of them as giant metal buckets. Once they're in position, the water gets pumped out so crews can build a dry foundation inside. Concrete turns that space into a pillar rising from the seabed. The floating cranes drop long road sections between those pillars like puzzle pieces. It works well in shallow areas, but anchoring becomes difficult in deep waters due to high pressure, soft ground, and strong waves. Tunnels avoid this by going under the problem, literally. Crews can send tunnel boring machines called worms, or they can build submarine-sized tunnel segments on land and sink them into place. It's the same trick used in the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau megalink, which proves it works even in busy, deep water. Now, people might look at the map and think, 8 miles? That doesn't sound so bad. In reality, it's nothing like tossing a giant tree trunk over a river and calling it a bridge. Cars, buses, and trains need those long, slow, friendly ramps that don't feel like a roller coaster. By the time you build those ramps on both sides, the whole thing could stretch to nearly 20 miles. That puts it in the same club as giants like the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel in the US or the King Fahd Causeway between Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. But it's not just the scale or unpredictable seabed that makes this intercontinental project challenging. There's also the climate. Temperatures regularly pass 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Concrete dries faster than planned, so crews have to cool it or work in shorter windows. Steel stretches in the heat just enough to make precise work annoying. And workers themselves cannot stand in direct sunlight for long without feeling like a baked potato. On top of that, the salty sea air chews through metal quicker than most people expect, so the whole structure needs tough protective layers and regular checkup. If this project gets the green light, you're looking at a timeline of several years. A good comparison is the Øresund link between Denmark and Sweden. It's only about 10 miles long and still took around 4 years to build, in an environment that is much easier to handle than the Red Sea. Then there's the price tag. Early numbers land around $4 billion, but that feels more like a starting guess than a final bill. If they run into problems, that figure will almost certainly climb. There's also one other problem that must be brought up: swimming right under the surface. The Strait of Tirana is home to dolphins, rays, sea turtles, and even sharks, including harmless reef sharks that glide around like they're protecting the beautiful, colorful corals below. These reefs aren't just decoration, they're some of the healthiest in the entire Red Sea. Scientists say that in parts of the northern Red Sea, some corals tolerate higher temperatures than many others around the world, which makes these reefs especially valuable from a climate resilience perspective. That means even a single mistake during construction could cloud the water with sediment, and that alone can smother corals like dust settling on wet paint. The same goes for noise, drilling, and ship movement. Reefs can't exactly move away if annoyed like fish can. Once they're damaged, it can take decades for them to grow back. That is, if they grow back. To avoid that, planners have to build in ways that keep the water as clear and calm as possible. Construction zones may need silt curtains to stop sediment from drifting away. Heavy equipment might have to avoid areas with dense coral clusters. Some sections could lean more toward tunnels instead of pillars to leave the seabed undisturbed. Every decision has to match the underwater map, not just the one on land. On top of that, the whole project would need constant supervision from scientists and inspectors. They would have to check how cloudy the water becomes and how marine animals behave during the work. If something looks off, the only responsible move is to slow down or change the method, instead of just rushing to finish faster and leaving the reef to pay the price. But if everything finally clicks into place, the payoff is massive. Right now, if you decide to skip the ferry and stay on land, the map punishes you. You have to loop all the way around the top of the Red Sea, through other countries on a drive more than 1,000 miles. All of that just to cross a stretch of water that is only a few miles wide at its narrowest point. It's like walking around the entire block just to knock on your neighbor's door. A permanent link would change this. Travel time drops, ports on both sides become easier to reach, and a drive from Africa to Asia suddenly feels as normal as crossing a long highway bridge. Not to mention the coolest part, which would be the view if they decided on the hybrid version. You begin your journey on the Sinai side, with the desert behind you and the Red Sea ahead. Instead of waiting in a ferry line, you roll onto a rising ramp while the water glimmers below. The road dips into a tunnel under a busy shipping lane, and before long, you're back in the sunlight on the other side, now on a different continent. The train version could feel even smoother. You find your seat, the doors close, and the train glides toward the crossing without any stop-and-go traffic. It slips into its own tunnel section, runs quietly under the sea, and pops back up on the Asian side before you have even finished scrolling your feed. For tourists, that could mean more resorts, more quick weekend trips, and a brand new continental hop that becomes a must-try experience. For delivery trucks, every hour saved is money earned. Even local towns would feel the change. They'd get more visitors, more trade, and bigger profits. A link like this doesn't just connect land. It connects economies, ports, and everyday life. And that's a giant opportunity, as long as the underwater world stays protected.
The Arctic is disappearing. In just a few years, the North Pole could see its first ice-free summer in the last 125,000 years. But a bold new experiment might turn back the clock. Scientists are refreezing the Arctic. If they succeed, they could save the North Pole. But if they fail, they could trigger unforeseen disasters. So, which way would things go? Well, here's some backstory. Deep in the Arctic, temperatures drop so low that metal cracks and winds scream across the ice. In winter, it's minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit on average. But despite the seemingly extreme cold, it's actually melting, warming 2 to 3 times faster than the rest of the planet. Now, ice is like Earth's natural mirror. It reflects sunlight back into space, keeping the planet cool. When it melts, it exposes the dark ocean underneath. The ocean absorbs sunlight instead of reflecting it, and it spreads all across the planet. This warms the planet even faster, melting even more ice. It's a vicious cycle, and if it continues, we'll reach a point where the ice won't come back. That thick, ancient ice that has covered the North Pole for thousands of years is already 95% gone. It's been disappearing since the 1980s. The ice that remains there now is thin and fragile, and when it disappears, it will trigger a dangerous chain reaction. Meanwhile, a group of researchers from a UK startup called Real Ice is out there trying to slow down or even reverse the melting of the Arctic. The project takes place in a tiny frozen village in Canada called Cambridge Bay. Real Ice wants to break the vicious cycle, and here's their plan. First, they drill through the existing ice and place an underwater pump beneath it. Then they pump seawater onto the ice surface, where it quickly freezes into an extra thick layer. Finally, they remove snow from the ice, which usually acts like a blanket, preventing further freezing. After that, ice keeps growing, stronger, thicker, and harder to melt. It's a simple idea inspired by nature itself. Ice naturally forms this way in some Arctic regions, but now scientists want to do it on a massive scale. So far, it appears to be working. Between January and May 2024, they covered around 44,000 square feet of ice, and it became 20 inches thicker on average. And in November 2024, they started a new round of tests. In the first 10 days of the trial, the ice was already 4 inches thicker. Now they'll return in May 2025 to check out how things are going. They think it's going to get between around 16 to 31 inches of it during the Arctic winter. It's a small start, admittedly, but if they can prove it works, their plan is to expand across an area more than twice the size of California, about 386,000 square miles of ice. And they're not stopping there. The big idea is to send in 500,000 underwater drones, powered by clean energy, to automate the entire process. These drones would drill holes, pump water, and refreeze the ice without human intervention. But not everyone is convinced. Some scientists think this whole idea is a disaster waiting to happen. First, they point out that saltier ice, the one from seawater pumped onto it, melts faster in the summer. So if this new ice melts too quickly, we could end up making the situation worse. Some of them also think this is a dangerous distraction from the core problem, like treating the symptoms instead of the root causes. Besides, making a small patch of ice thicker is one thing, but doing this across the entire Arctic? That's another challenge entirely. Another thing they're worried about is the ecosystem. The Arctic is one of the most fragile ecosystems on Earth. Changing ice thickness could affect marine life, disrupt algae growth, and impact the food chain in ways we don't fully understand. There's also the question of money. Real Ice estimates that refreezing the entire Arctic will cost about $5 to $6 billion per year. Who's paying for this? Right now, they're self-funded with some investors backing them. But eventually, they hope that countries, global funds, and even corporations will finance the project. Real Ice argues that doing nothing could be far worse. If we don't act, we could lose the Arctic within our lifetime. That could at least help to buy more time to fix the planet. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Now, the idea of saving the Arctic ice isn't new. Over the years, scientists have suggested some pretty wild plans to stop the melting. In 2017, there was the initial wind-powered pump plan. Physicist Stephen Desch proposed installing about 10 million wind-powered pumps in the Arctic. These pumps would pull seawater up onto the ice, kind of like real ice. It would freeze in the cold winter months, creating a thicker ice layer. The biggest problem is that someone would have to run this entire show. And what happens if something goes wrong? In 2018, There was the glass beads plan, which was supposed to start in 2020s. A team called the Arctic Ice Project suggested covering the Arctic with tiny reflective glass beads. Yep, glass balls. The idea was basically to replace the ice's mirror effect. The beads would bounce sunlight away, keeping the ice colder for longer. The plan is being tested by a group of scientists working with the Arctic Ice Project. They say the glass balls are made of a material that's safe for animals. They even claim birds use similar materials to help them digest food. The glass used in these microspheres is the same material used in lab equipment and light bulbs. Sounds safe, right? Well, not so fast. There's also the environmental risk. These glass balls are tiny, and they could easily get into the ocean, impacting everything from fish to plankton. We still need more research to understand how this material breaks down in the ocean and whether it could affect marine life. But where things get really crazy is when we start talking about scaling this up. To cover just a tiny fraction of the Arctic, they would need millions of tons of these tiny microspheres, and that's just for starters. And they'd have to be working 24/7 through freezing temperatures and snowstorms. The scientists believe this could help keep the ice thick enough to survive summer and even slow the melting. But can it really work? Then, there's also the Bright Ice Initiative, founded by the same folks behind the Arctic Ice Project. Instead of focusing on the Arctic Ocean, they want to use the same glass microspheres to restore glaciers. They've even tried this out on a glacier in Iceland, but experts are still skeptical. They say it could just speed up melting instead of reversing it. Now, another idea was cloud seeding with water particles. This would involve spraying ocean water into the sky itself. This would form clouds, and they'd reflect more sunlight. So, as you can see, some of these plans were too expensive, too complicated, or just straight up wild. The Real ICES plan borrows ideas from earlier projects, but is much cheaper and more practical. Most importantly, it's working. But all this Arctic disaster is already affecting people. In the village of Newtok, Alaska, the land is disappearing. Each year, about 70 feet of the riverbank erodes, taking homes and history with it. That's all because of the erosion and the thawing permafrost. Now, these people had to move to a safer place called Murtavik, just 9 miles away. But it's a long and challenging journey. The relocation is taking years of planning, with Newtok residents already starting the shift in 2019. The new village offers better health and safety, but it's still a work in progress. Things like the school and grocery store remain in the old village, which makes things harder. Water and sewage systems are being set up, and for now, most residents are using a honey bucket system. But at least they have a chance to rebuild. It's still unclear whether these geoengineering ideas are a lifeline or a disaster. For now, we can just keep an eye on them.
Closing the North Sea in a nearly 400-mile-long dam may save Europe from complete disaster. This is not some sci-fi stuff. It's real. And it's called NEED, Northern European Enclosure Dam. It's a last-ditch plan to save over 25 million people from 15 European countries from the rising sea levels. To build this giant bathtub, humans need one dam between England and France, another one between Norway and Scotland, 51 billion tons of sand, and almost 600 billion euros. As crazy as it may sound, this project is totally feasible, except for one teeny tiny detail. The scientists who had this literally life-saving idea don't want the dam to be built. First and foremost, the NEED needs, two dams. One that is 100 miles long and almost 334 feet deep in the English Channel, and another that is 300 miles long and more than 1,000 feet deep in the North Sea. Building something like this requires a crazy amount of materials, like the 51 billion tons of sand we mentioned before, which is basically all the sand everyone on the planet uses in a year. And yes, this dam would obviously be the biggest in history, smashing records like the Netherlands' 19-mile Afsluitdijk and South Korea's 20-mile Saemangam seawall. The NEED Dam would be 19 times bigger than Saemangam. It sounds ridiculous, but it's not impossible. You see, humans are pretty good at building big stuff. Oil rigs, for example, operate at depths of up to 6,500 feet, and the Need Dam would only go down more than 1,000 feet. Plus, China has a 102-mile-long bridge, and the dam would only be 4 times longer. Besides, projects like this dam were done before for the exact same reason. It's our friend Afsluitdijk in the Netherlands, which was built almost 100 years ago. The idea here was to shut off a part of the North Sea, called Zuiderzee, and protect the Netherlands from all the flooding because most of the country is below sea level. They even drained one of the lakes formed by the dam and created a whole new province, Flevoland. Today, the Netherlands has more than 2,200 miles of flood protection, but it's only designed for a 15-inch sea level rise. Without it, the country would be underwater. So yeah, we could do it, but it's really expensive. How expensive? Well, it would cost around 550 billion euros if the project is wrapped up in about 20 years. One wrong step and humans can spend 100 years building this dam, and a couple of billion euros more. The good news is that this much money can be diluted over the 20 to 100 years it takes for the dam to get finished. Besides, the 15 countries it would protect could share the expenses, reducing the amount to only 0.1% of the GDP of all the countries. Not a bad deal to save millions of people, right? Okay, but is this monstrosity really necessary? Well, unfortunately, humans have managed to turn the ocean against us. This means that by 2100, the sea levels are expected to have risen between 1 to 2 feet. If we keep acting like it's none of our business, the rise can reach more than 16 feet by 2300. It may sound like a distant future, but NASA has just discovered that the ocean rose way more than they expected in 2024, which means global disaster is breathing down our necks as we speak. Let's go back to our geography classes for a moment and learn why sea levels are rising altogether. First, because land can sink. The city of Norfolk, Virginia, for example, was built inside a massive crater, and the earth there can erode and sink. Then the soil can get compacted. Because of that, the city is literally sinking into the ground, making it more vulnerable to flooding. In California, some areas are sinking too, but this time it's because of the movement of tectonic plates. Some of the land that is underwater goes up, some of the land over the water goes down. The consequences? Again, heavy flooding. Sea levels also rise if the planet gets too hot. This happens because of a thing called thermal expansion. It has a very scientific name, but it basically means that things like water get bigger if the temperature rises. Half of the reason why sea levels are rising is because of this. This is why the level of the ocean increases almost 10 feet every time the average temperature of the planet rises by 33.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Since 1880, the sea has risen more than 8 inches. Okay, so we build the Need Dam and the problem is solved, right? Well, building this dam comes with massive consequences. First, the ocean currents, think of them as underwater highways that deliver nutrients to tiny creatures like planktons, not the SpongeBob villain, and give rides to animals like lizards and tortoises. A dam this big is capable of messing up the ocean currents that bathe Europe, disrupting the food chain not just inside the dam, but outside too. The currents are also responsible for the climate of coastal areas. The Gulf Stream, for example, is a warm current that comes all the way from Mexico and makes the weather in northwestern Europe a bit more bearable. If the Gulf Stream got interrupted by a gigantic oceanic barrier, it could make parts of Europe even colder. Another problem is that the North Sea would turn into a gigantic freshwater lake. This would happen because the salt water that used to flow from the ocean would now be blocked. And the North Sea would only be fed by the fresh water coming from inside the continent. This process would eventually lead to a thing called desalination, when salt water gets less salty. And it's really terrible because saltwater animals would start to absorb more water than they should, making the cells of their bodies swell. The consequences can be fatal. The disruption of the ocean currents by the dam can also affect the renewal of oxygen in the water. Think of the ocean as a giant recycling system. Surface water needs to sink to deliver oxygen to the deep sea, keeping creatures dwelling at the bottom alive. Without the movement of ocean currents, oxygen would run out and toxic bacteria would take over, creating a poisonous environment for sea creatures. And this is not just a theory. It happened before, 250 million years ago. The ocean got so toxic, it wiped out 95% of marine life and caused a mass extinction. If it's not bad enough, the fishing industry would collapse, and the busiest trading ports of Europe like Rotterdam, Antwerp, and Hamburg would be stuck inside the dam. Sure, we could build sluice gates, but imagine all those traffic jams. The rain patterns of the countries protected by the dam would change too, affecting farming lands and food production. On the other hand, if we do nothing about rising sea levels, permanent flooding could make whole countries disappear. 3 million people on the islands of the Pacific would need to move away by the end of the century. The Maldives would lose 77% of its territories, and cities like Jakarta, Bangladesh, and Lagos would go underwater. Storms would get more dangerous too, destroying treatment plants for sewage and power stations and contaminating farmlands. Rising salt water could also contaminate freshwater supplies, and it's not just happening in Asia and Europe. Philadelphia, for example, is already developing plans to deal with this bleak scenario. This is why the scientists who developed this big red button shaped like a dam don't want people to actually build a dam. They know how bad things can get, which is why they came up with a plan so wild it's basically the engineering version of screaming, "Hey, stop ignoring the planet!" It's a warning. If we don't act now, we'll be stuck building megadams just to keep our cities from becoming Atlantis 2.0. And let's be honest, nobody wants to live in a future where the apocalypse looks like the deep web version of The Little Mermaid. If one of the many apocalyptic scenarios come true and humanity is wiped out completely, a black box will tell whoever comes after us about what has led to that scary day. The 33-foot-long vault in a remote part of western Tasmania is supposed to document all the mistakes humanity has made that led to an apocalypse. The artists, architects, and researchers behind the Earth's black box hope that the art installation made of thick, reinforced steel will withstand fire, water, and any other natural disasters, except probably for total planetary destruction. Just like the black box you can find in planes, this time capsule is supposed to help the next civilization do better and avoid the probable sad and tragic fate of our humanity. The project is fully non-commercial and has an important message. The box will be full of storage drives and have access to the internet. Solar panels on the roof will power it, and batteries will take care of backup power storage. Whenever the sun's out, the black box will be updating itself with new scientific data. A special algorithm will sort it only to save the information relevant to the project. It will be measurements of land and sea temperatures, ocean acidification, species extinction, land use changes, as well as data on human population and energy consumption. The second type of data for the box will be newspaper headlines, social media posts, and news from the key global events focusing on the environment. The creators of the box decided to encode and store data for it in several formats, including binary code. The instructions on how to retrieve all that priceless knowledge would be etched into the outside of the box. Some of the big brains involved in the project are afraid that this could inspire some curious bad guys to break into the box long before it's time to do it. The solar-powered hard drive will have enough space to collect data over 50 years. Even the most pessimistic scientific models don't predict the end of the world any sooner anyway. It might even take centuries before the worst happens. The idea of a box that would record everything that happened before an accident in aviation was born in the middle of the 20th century. Back then, the world's first jetliner, de Havilland's Comet, crashed 7 times over 2 years, taking the lives of 110 people. The Department of Civil Aviation in Australia wanted to find the possible cause of all these crashes. One of these experts was Dr. David Warren, a chemist specializing in aviation fuels. He realized that there was simply not enough data to make any conclusions. There was no one to tell what had really happened before the crash. He remembered seeing a dictaphone that recorded sound on steel wire at a trade fair. Soon, Dr. Warren wrote a memo to his manager offering to design a voice recorder to follow what was going on in the cockpit. It would also record flight data and be stored in a crash-proof container. Flying wasn't a huge thing in Australia back then, so the manager didn't appreciate the idea. Dr. Warren then started working on a prototype in his own garage. He showed the ready device to the secretary of the British Air Registration Board when he was in Australia. He absolutely loved the idea, so later, Dr. Warren got a whole team to help him develop a pre-production prototype. The correct way to call his invention is actually not black box, but flight data recorder, and it's orange, not black. We probably call it black because those gadgets get charred black after a crash. Or maybe because the first boxes were painted that color to prevent reflection. Or because that's the general name scientists use for devices with in and output of data with complex internal workings. So, the flight data recorder consists of two parts: the data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. Historically, they were two boxes, but now they're just two cylinders. The data recorder keeps track of such important flight data as engine exhaust, temperature, fuel flow, aircraft velocity, altitude, and rate of descent. The second part records sound in the cockpit to analyze communication with air traffic control in case of an accident. The device only records data for up to 2 hours and then overwrites the previous sounds. Sometimes, the two parts are combined and they look like a box. The devices record data and voices from the cockpit, but they are actually located in the tail end of the aircraft, where the structure of the plane will protect them best in case of a crash. The black box has a locator beacon, which is activated when water gets on it, but it will send out a pulse for 30 days. Search parties use the bright orange color of the recorder as a visual beacon. Sometimes, it takes a long time to find the box, and in some cases, they don't find it at all. Long before the first plane was invented, there was an original black box of planetary meaning, the ancient library of Alexandria. Back in the ancient days, people in places like Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Greece were no strangers to libraries and archives. But these early institutions were more about preserving local traditions and heritage. The whole concept of a universal library only became a thing when the Greeks started thinking big. They were so impressed by what their neighbors in Egypt were doing that they arranged expeditions to acquire knowledge. Alexander the Great, the king of Macedonia, seeing that hunger for knowledge required his companions, generals, and scholars to report to him in detail on regions that were previously unmapped. It helped collect plenty of information on geography and contributed to the creation of a great library. Most of the information it had was written in Greek. It had the books of Aristotle as part of the whole corpus of Greek literature. Some sources say that in the hunt for new books, the library's founders would stop every ship sailing into the harbor of Alexandria. If they found books, they would take them to the library. If they decided it was valuable, they'd make a quick copy and return it to the owner with some compensation, leaving the original at the library. Another story tells us that Ptolemy III, grandson of the founder of the library, offered the governors of Athens a huge compensation to copy the original texts of the greatest poets. He then kept the originals and sent them back copies. Once the Roman Empire arrived, they burnt all that knowledge, not thinking that it might lead to their own collapse. There was no easy way of spreading information across the world, so one source had most of the knowledge humanity had accumulated by then. The great minds of those times didn't just fill it with knowledge, but also made important connections, trying to make the best use of that information. If the Library of Alexandria hadn't burnt, we could have gotten some priceless knowledge about the people who had lived before the current era. Some scientists believe that big data could have saved the Vikings that had settled in Greenland many centuries ago. It might have also helped the Easter Island civilization to identify and address problems caused by volcanic activity, latitude, and rainfall patterns, and restore soil fertility. They say that a typical person living today is exposed to as much data in one day as someone in the 15th century would learn in their entire lifetime. And there's a theory that every papyrus scroll on the whole Library of Alexandria could probably fit onto an ordinary flash drive you have in your pocket. There's so much big data generated every day that it might do us more harm than good because of a huge information overload. We're moving towards a global civilization, so if all that knowledge disappears, we lose not one empire, but the entire world. In 2023, an ex-NASA engineer claimed he built a machine that can lift itself against gravity without using any fuel. No rockets, no fire, no exhaust, just electricity. If true, it would break the most sacred laws in physics and rewrite everything we know about space travel. So, is this just another hoax or a door to the future? The engineer's name is Charles Bueller. He used to work for NASA, making sure rockets don't blow up randomly. He was a part of the Space Shuttle, Hubble, ISS, and other huge projects. Now, Bueller and his team work at a private company called Exodus Propulsion Technologies, trying to build a long-term dream of space engineers, a spacecraft that doesn't need fuel. It's the kind of thing that would instantly change everything about space travel. Just think of the future where you could go to the moon, Mars, or wherever you'd like without spending tons of resources. And he claims that he and his team have finally cracked the code. That they've built a machine that can lift itself in the air without any propellant. You got it right. The team claims to have violated Newton's third law, the basic rule of our world that every action needs an equal and opposite reaction. For example, in rockets, you throw fuel out the back, that's action. Being pushed by it, the rocket goes forward. That's the reaction. A magical device like that would also violate the conservation of momentum. When you push on something, you gain momentum, but something else has to gain equal momentum in the opposite direction to balance the books. But this device would change the total momentum of the system out of nowhere. If you're getting motion without pushing against anything, how in the world did you do that? It's like a balloon that can somehow move forward without blowing out any air. If the machine actually works, there must be some new, unknown force of nature that we've somehow missed in hundreds of years of physics. Bueller himself called it the new force. Let's try to figure it out. To create this magical device, they used electrostatics. Their test device was little, a 30-gram object about the size of a card deck, and it managed to create thrust or push using electric fields, a kind of invisible force made by electric charges. The new force starts working when two things happen in the system. The first one is electric imbalance. There's some electric pressure happening across parts of the device, kind of like air pressure. If it's not spread out evenly across it, for example, one side has more electric push than the other, that's the first ingredient. And that happens when the electric field, the invisible force that electric charges create, is set up just right. It has to spread out in a certain way, not in straight lines, but uneven and fanning out, like sun rays or the spokes of a wheel. And boom, when it happens, the device pushes on itself and makes the whole object move. At first, the mysterious new force was tiny, barely noticeable, little to no thrust and noise. But with each upgrade, things started to shift. And in 2023, they finally measured enough thrust to overcome Earth's gravity. The weirdest part is that, according to Bueller, in some cases, the thrust keeps going even when the power is off, as long as there's still charge left in the materials. That's weird. That's really weird. That hints at something totally new in physics. something deeper than we currently understand. So now, any honest scientist starts sweating, because that sounds bananas, and frankly, it might be. Bueller admits this is still early work. The team published their discovery and got a patent. By the way, the company includes people who've worked at NASA, Blue Origin, and the US Air Force. They've been tinkering with this stuff for decades. Charles presented his findings at APEC, a conference for people who are passionate about alternative propulsion and crazy stuff like warp drives, anti-gravity, and ways to make Star Trek real. Now, they're actively working on that project. Of course, this stuff got very controversial, and lots of scientists are skeptical. There might be a mistake no one has caught yet, so they want to test the machine in space. If it works out there too, it could change space travel forever. It might be real, because it's not the first time we've discovered something like this. Recently, a startup called Evo Limited claimed that they'd built a quantum drive, another propulsion device that apparently didn't need fuel. They said they're tapping into a weird controversial theory of physics called quantized inertia. It was cooked up by a British physicist named Mike McCulloch. He basically said that inertia, the thing that makes objects resist acceleration, isn't a basic rule of nature, but an effect caused by some weird quantum radiation at the edge of the observable universe. In simple words, if QI is right, then under the right conditions, you might be able to generate thrust without throwing anything backward. You don't need fuel, just electricity and a clever enough setup. Many scientists don't buy into it, but who knows? Maybe that's why these new inventions could actually work. Anyway, initially, the IVO company was founded by a small team of tech guys who wanted to find wireless power. Their first big idea was called CBAT, capacitive-based aerial transmission. Basically, a fancy way to wirelessly send electricity through the air. But somewhere along the way, they pivoted. They started wondering, if we can move electricity through the air like this, can we move objects too? Can we rethink inertia itself? So, in 2021, they began working on a propulsion device based on this quantized inertia theory. They built the quantum drive around this idea. It was a self-contained electric system. No fuel tanks, no combustion, just a plug-and-play box that makes spacecraft move. They said it's light, stackable, and can be bolted onto a satellite like a toaster. And it weighs just a few hundred grams, way lighter than traditional thrusters. In 2023, they tested it, not in someone's garage, but in a legit vacuum chamber, simulating space conditions. The team said they ruled out every known force that might explain the results, and that it did generate thrust, not a lot, but consistent and measurable. Then came the big moment. IVO and a partner company, Rogue Space Systems, launched the quantum drive into space, and now they're waiting for the results of the tests. A lot of physicists think it's all nonsense. Some of them notice that this stuff is impossible because they'd be perpetual motion machines. Basically, if a device like this actually worked, you could use it to make infinite energy, which violates the first law of thermodynamics. But IVO says they're not doing that. They say QI works within our normal Newton's laws, just a bit differently. Anyway, all this stuff needs double-checking. Skepticism is so right because a lot of people get some unpleasant flashbacks. In 2001, a British engineer named Roger Scheuer introduced the M drive. It was this weird cone-shaped device that supposedly created thrust without pushing anything out the back. People were super excited. NASA even tested it with their EagleWorks team, and in 2016, they said they've detected tiny amounts of thrust from the M drive. The media absolutely blew up. People and scientists were hyped up, but later, bigger studies, including one from a German university that really went deep, found the sad result. It was just an experimental error. By 2021, the verdict was in. The M drive didn't work. It was all experimental noise, misunderstood data. Another dream went down the drain. Many propellantless designs have crashed into one huge, stubborn wall: the laws of physics. So it's too early to say that these startups just change the world forever, but if it turns out to be real, it's not just a new engine, it's a new era.
Traveling to space costs a fortune, but there's a way to make it affordable. You step into an elevator, push the button, and voila! You're flying to the stars, all thanks to nanotubes. But then something hits the elevator on the way. You're stuck inside, and now you're doomed to float in space forever. Now, if you want to travel in space, get ready to shell out around $55 million. But in the near future, you'll probably be able to travel to space with just the push of a button without breaking the bank, because space elevators might come into play. While the idea of galactic lifts seems like something out of a sci-fi movie, it is a real possibility that could revolutionize space travel. With an estimated cost of $8 billion, space elevators could be a one-time investment that would last us forever. NASA alone spends around $2.7 million on rocket fuel per minute. To launch a rocket, they need to pay up to $178 million. These costs could be significantly reduced with the use of elevators. Most super tall buildings on Earth have a massive foundation to help with their balance and weight. As you look up, they get thinner and thinner. Even the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa, is massive at the bottom and narrow at the top. If we wanted to construct something like a gigantic lift, we would need an enormous amount of concrete to build a foundation for it, which goes against the point of saving some cash. Now, get a string, tie a ball at the end of it, and start spinning it. The string in your hand will stay in one place, and the ball will revolve around your hand. This is called centrifugal force, and the elevator will work in the same way. The ball will be the base in space, and the rope will hang toward Earth. The station from where we would enter the elevator would be in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and the line would extend from there. For this to be possible, the line must be perfectly synchronized with Earth's rotation. Otherwise, it would simply break or wrap around the Earth like a scarf. Also, the orbit the line would be following should be a perfect circle, because the line wouldn't be able to get shorter or extend. A bunch of research has been done using algebra to find the ideal solution. Wait a second, there's a use for algebra? Never mind. Meanwhile, I won't bore you with the math. We'll go straight to the point where the precise distance from the station in the Atlantic to the one in space must be 22,236 miles above the Earth, where the geosynchronous orbit starts. There, the four outward forces are much stronger than the downward force. That's why the station would stay in one place. When you construct a house or a building, you start from the bottom going up. But to create this engineering wonder, we would need to do everything in reverse and start at the top. The main problem here would be the weight. If the line was too heavy, it would disrupt the orbit, and the conveyor dumbwaiter host would not work. So we need to balance the station in space to ensure it worked flawlessly. Steel is one of the most robust materials on Earth. The cable in every lift is made from steel. But when you need a 22,236-mile-long cable, things can get tricky. Steel is hard to break, but it's cumbersome, and when you have to use a lot of it, problems start to arise. We use heavy steel a lot in construction, but we have lighter materials that might put less stress on the station and eliminate this problem. Also, the line would have to be tapered because, at the endpoint, there would be close to zero stress. But it would still have to be thicker than really needed due to a bunch of safety factors. At the start, the rope would be around 0.5 inches. After using some complicated math, we can figure out the thickness at the end, which is a number so long I am unable to pronounce it. But believe me, it's a big one. So, steel is off the list. Another candidate is Kevlar, which is 5 times stronger than steel. And if we added such materials as carbon and titanium into the mix, the strength would increase tenfold. The line would have a diameter of around 262 to 557 feet. This is drastically smaller than the diameter of the steel cable could be. The bad news is that doing this is too pricey. So if we don't find the ideal medium to build a cable, the idea of the space elevator will just be a massive waste of time. If only we had some magically light material with a power of 60 gigapascals, which would have a taper ratio of 1.6. Oh wait, we actually do have this unique material. It's called carbon nanotube. It has a strength of 130 gigapascals, which is much more than we need. Nanotubes are made out of carbon and are 100,000 times thinner than a human hair. This material is solid and has good conductive power, which is possible thanks to its unique atomic structure. We use this product in many things, from batteries to optics, and it can be modified entirely and adapted for more uses. Bradley Edwards is the guy responsible for this crazy idea. NASA was looking for new innovations, and they said, "Don't do anything too crazy and start building a space hoist." I guess Bradley took this as a challenge and started working on the elevator. Edwards wrote a paper about a galactic conveyor. When he published it, he expected many people to find flaws in his work, but surprisingly, nobody did. His work was spot on. He came up with the idea of strapping a nanotube line to a rocket and launching it into space. The other end of the rope would fall onto Earth, and robots would use this rope to climb up and make it longer, so we could start building an elevator space station. After this, the elevator could start transporting everything, from solar panels to tourists. In the future, space tourism could be totally possible. Who knows? We might even go on vacations in space. Hey, looking for some atmosphere for your getaway? Well, don't come here, we don't have any. Oops, probably not a good advertising slogan, huh? Meanwhile, a couple of years ago, we could only create microscopic carbon nanotubes. But as time went on, much more research was done to make them bigger. Now they reach up to a few inches. In 20 years, they could be miles long. Carbon costs $28 per ounce. If we do the math, we would see that we would need around $1 billion to build a lift. Yeah, it sounds expensive, but it's a long-term solution to space travel, and it can actually save us a lot of money in the long run. Now, everything looks perfect on paper, but NASA's main reason why they chose not to go along with this project is that right now there are probably more than 128 million objects floating in orbit, and they might pose a real threat to the elevator. The lift could be made to withstand a few hits now and then, but getting hammered non-stop is not part of the plan. Still, Bradley argues that tons of monitoring devices track space debris. Thus, the elevator could avoid them all. Now, if something hit the elevator or the line somehow broke, the consequences would not be too bad. If there were no passengers on board, of course. If the line got cut, the elevator would simply float away into space, posing no threat to people on Earth. In Japan, engineers are trying to build a space elevator. The lift could be used for space mining, too. We could easily cover the cost of the entire elevator by collecting asteroids, because some of them are made of expensive metals. We could mine them and quickly bring them back to Earth. At the time, nobody knew it was Steve Jobs' last public appearance. He spoke in front of the Cupertino City Council just 4 months before he passed away. And there, he presented the new Apple Park campus project. Now, back in the 90s, Apple built its first campus and called it Infinite Loop. The entire place was set up in a ring around a looped road, named after the programming thing where a code runs on repeat forever. Cool, huh? Anyway, it was fine for a while, but as Apple kept growing, they simply ran out of room. So they began grabbing more buildings around the area. Eventually, it turned into this messy setup of mismatched offices that didn't work together at all. Instead of ditching Infinite Loop, Apple decided to keep it and build a huge modern campus nearby. They got lucky with a giant plot of land right next to Interstate 280. This highway cuts through Silicon Valley, so it would be super easy for people to get to work. That land once belonged to Hewlett-Packard, but since this company was downsizing, they decided to sell and Apple jumped on it. Interestingly, Jobs worked at Hewlett-Packard as a teenager, which made the land acquisition personally significant for him. To create their dream campus, Apple brought in a big-name architect, Norman Foster, and his design studio. The idea was to make one giant building big enough to fit 12,000 people. That's why the main building of the campus is a massive ring with a focus on collaboration. The creators wanted to ensure that workers from different departments could meet frequently in shared spaces. A major feature of the building is the use of giant curved glass panels. They provide awesome panoramic views and an overall sense of openness. The ring-shaped building is surrounded by tons of parkland. Inside, it's divided into 9 sections, connected by bright, open atriums. And it's all wrapped in a continuous wall of floor-to-ceiling glass, so you get a full view of the green space outside from anywhere inside the ring. The setup inside is also different. It's one huge open space where people can sit wherever they want, like in a co-working space or on a college campus. The whole idea is to get people to work together more easily. Surprisingly, or not, after all, introverts do exist, not everyone is on board with this open layout. Some Apple employees, especially programmers, say it's actually hard to concentrate with all the open space and noise. Now, even though that massive circular building is incredible, it still doesn't have enough room for everyone at Apple. So they've been adding extra buildings nearby. But the new ones aren't as crazy cool in design as the main building. To keep things running smoothly, Apple also set up a private shuttle system to get employees through the traffic-heavy streets of Silicon Valley. Apple Park wasn't simply expensive to build. It was next-level expensive, reportedly costing around $5 billion in total. When you break that down, it comes out to about $1,785 per square foot, or a surprising $12.40 per square inch. That's because almost everything in Apple Park was custom-made and thoroughly designed. How about we take a closer look at what went into some of the major structures? The main building, also known as the spaceship, is the heart of Apple Park and the most recognizable construction. The main ring-shaped structure is huge, measuring a full mile in circumference. The building itself is famous for its over 3,000 custom-made curved glass panels, which form the continuous glass walls. And here's how much all that beauty cost Apple. Then there's Steve Jobs Theater. This venue is a special addition to the campus, created in memory of Apple's founder Steve Jobs. It spans 160,000 square feet and seats up to 1,000 people. This makes it perfect for Apple's famous product launches and other events. The theater's lobby alone cost about $12 million to build. Architect Norman Foster designed it so that only the elegant all-glass lobby is visible from the outside. This pavilion is supported entirely by glass with no columns, which makes it the largest structure in the world to be fully supported by glass. The architect wanted the construction to look like a jewel nestled in the park. The entire theater sits underground and opens into a stunning 20-foot-tall glass cylinder. The cylinder is capped by one of the world's largest carbon fiber roofs. And here's how much the entire theater cost. The visitor center at Apple Park was designed so that even the general public could get a small taste of the Apple Park experience. This building includes a guest reception area, a display zone where visitors can check out Apple's products, and a cafe. There's also an additional 2 million square feet of parking here, which cost around $26 million to construct. Well, at least it ensures plenty of space for visitors. The Visitor Center even offers an exclusive Apple Store with merchandise that's only available at this location, along with an augmented reality tour of the campus. It's as cool as it sounds and gives people a virtual look at what it's like inside Apple Park. The construction of the Visitor Center wasn't cheap either. Now, Apple takes employee well-being seriously, and the campus includes a massive 100,000 square foot fitness and wellness center with state-of-the-art facilities. This isn't just your basic gym. It's got multiple gyms, a 2-story yoga studio, and even meditation rooms for mental wellness. There are also facilities for team sports, physical therapy spaces, and even on-site medical and dental services. It seems there's everything to make sure employees have the support they need to stay healthy and active. It all comes with a hefty price tag, though. Apple Park doesn't just look futuristic. It's also designed to be super eco-friendly. But before we dwell on that, Let's take a look at Apple's giant data center in Reno, Nevada. This data center powers services like Siri, iCloud, Apple Music, and Apple Pay. The complex is made up of 5 huge white buildings, connected by a long central corridor, and holds more than 200,000 servers. To keep everything running and cooled, this data center is fully powered by 100% green energy from 3 Apple-owned solar farms. And it's not just the Reno data center. Apple has announced that all its facilities, from the Apple Park headquarters to its distribution centers and retail stores worldwide, now run on 100% renewable energy. Apple Park itself is part of this commitment. 17 megawatts of solar panels cover its roof, making it one of the largest renewable energy installations of its kind globally. At the moment, this 100% green energy goal covers only Apple's direct operations and doesn't yet include its suppliers. But the company has already convinced a few dozen of its key suppliers to commit to using 100% renewable energy for the parts of their business that serve Apple. But probably the coolest thing of them all is that Apple Park was engineered to handle California's earthquake risks. The building relies on a technology called base isolation. It essentially places the whole structure on 692 large steel saucers 2 stories underground. In the event of an earthquake, the saucers allow the building to slide up to 4 feet in any direction, so the whole construction remains stable and protected. This floating design helps the structure withstand even severe tremors, keeping everyone and everything inside safe. Now, unlike campuses like Google's, Apple Park is actually closed to the public. Luckily, there's the visitor center we talked about. At the moment, it's likely the only way outsiders can experience the vibe of Apple Park without needing an employee badge. In every sense, Apple Park is much more than just an office space. Its unique design, cutting-edge technology, and commitment to sustainability reflect Apple's brand and values. For Apple, this isn't just about making a workplace. It's about creating a high-tech, eco-friendly environment that shows off the company's obsession with quality, design, and perfection.
In Asia, there's a bridge that is way longer than you'd think should even be possible. The HZMB stretches 34 miles over open water, which makes it the longest sea bridge in the world. So if something this massive can make it across rough waters, why can't New Zealand just build a bridge between its 2 main islands? After all, we're talking about a distance of just 14 miles. And a bridge like that could seriously change life for both locals and tourists. People could just hop in a car and drive from Wellington to Picton. No more ferry hassles, no more drawn-out trips. Just one epic road journey with ocean views on both sides. So what's stopping them? Well, turns out, everything. I mean, building a bridge there is technically possible, but there are a couple reasons why experts are like, maybe not. Let's start with the obvious, the distance. The North Island and the South Island are separated by Cook Strait. Like I said, it's 14 miles wide at its narrowest point. That's not much, true. Plus, we've got the HZMB bridge, proving that, yep, it is technically possible to build a bridge over the sea to cover that distance. But we can't ignore the fact that New Zealand's geography is, well, a whole different ballgame. Cook Strait isn't exactly a calm, friendly stretch of water. It's deep, really deep. Parts of it drop to about 10,000 feet. That's like stacking 7 Empire State Buildings on top of each other. It's also a rough, moody stretch of ocean that loves tossing around ships like rubber ducks. In fact, quite a few have been wrecked in Cook Strait. And sadly, many lives were lost. You don't have to worry about it so much though, as the worst accidents happened a long time ago. The ships and ferries that cross it today are much safer. Even so, it'd be pretty hard to avoid getting seasick while crossing it. Things get even messier below the surface. The seafloor over there is uneven and unpredictable. What happens is that Cook Strait has opposing tides at each end, one where it meets the Tasman Sea and the other where it joins the Pacific Ocean. And they simply don't move together like you might expect. When the tide is high on one side, it's low on the other. and they're totally out of sync. So all that water rushes back and forth through the strait to balance things out, creating some really strong and messy currents in the middle. Then there's the weather. Cook Strait isn't just windy, it's probably one of the windiest places in the southern hemisphere. That's because it's located right in the middle of one of New Zealand's 3 big wind tunnels. Basically, there are places where the wind doesn't just come and go quickly. It sticks around, blowing hard for most of the year. And all of this happens because of something called the Roaring Forties. That's the name for the latitude band between 40 and 50 degrees south of the equator, where strong, persistent westerly winds are pretty common. Unlike the northern hemisphere, which has a lot of land at this latitude, the southern hemisphere is mostly ocean with just a few land masses, like New Zealand's South Island, Tasmania, and the southern tip of South America. So, these winds go wild because there's nothing to slow them down, and they just keep picking up speed. The gusts there can reach up to 150 miles per hour. So, imagine trying to cross a bridge in a car when the wind is actively pushing against you. That's not just unpleasant, it's super dangerous. Drivers can easily lose control of their cars with the wind pushing them sideways. And of course, that can lead to countless serious accidents. Now, let's talk about earthquakes. New Zealand sits right on the boundary of 2 massive tectonic plates, the Indo-Australian and Pacific plates. It's basically in the middle of a collision zone, and about 14,000 earthquakes happen in and around the country every year. Of those, only about 200 are big enough to be felt. Still, building a massive bridge under these conditions would require some serious genius-level engineering. With all that in mind, we can safely say that the whole bridge idea is off the table. But how about an underwater tunnel? Yep, that could work. It could be a great solution actually. No wind, no bad weather, and no earthquakes to deal with. There are a bunch of other advantages too. First, it would dramatically reduce travel time, cutting down the 3 to 4 hour sailing trip between the North and South Islands. That same journey would probably only take about 40 minutes. Then people wouldn't have to stress about all the ferry cancellations and delays because of bad weather. And most importantly, it's doable. I mean, look at the Channel Tunnel. It's an undersea tunnel connecting southern England and northern France. Japan did something similar with the Seikan Tunnel, which connects the islands of Honshu and Hokkaido. They are both huge projects, serving pretty much the same purpose. So why on earth isn't New Zealand already building this tunnel? Well, for the same reason we don't all live in luxury treehouses with personal robots: money. Estimates vary, but some experts think a project like this could cost anywhere from $10 to $20 billion. To cover that kind of cost, they'd probably need to charge tolls for the next 100 years. And trust me, those tolls wouldn't be cheap. Other experts think it could actually cost more than that. Because you see, we have to consider all the extra infrastructure. The narrowest point of Cook Strait is between the North Island and Arapawa Island. That's one of the long, mountainous regions in the Marlborough Sounds, which is pretty remote. So it's not just about the cost of the bridge or tunnel itself, it's also the access roads, safety systems, maintenance, and evacuation plans. You can't just build a huge underwater tunnel and not plan for the occasional emergencies. And what would it actually be used for? Sure, there are people who travel between the islands. About 1 million passengers take the ferry every year. But that's not exactly the kind of traffic that justifies the most expensive infrastructure project in the country's history. Earlier, we talked about how England and Japan have similar underwater tunnels. But there's something to consider. The United Kingdom has a population of 69 million. Japan has even more, with around 123 million people. And in New Zealand, they've only got 5 million residents to pay for this project. So could they have a tunnel under Cook Strait? Sure they could. Should they? Probably not. If you don't want to fly, the only other way to travel between the islands is by ferry. It's not ideal, but hey, it works. New Zealand has a total of 5 ships that transport people and vehicles across the islands. For tourists who aren't in a rush, it's perfect. You can cross the islands while taking in some of the most stunning views and spotting amazing wildlife. You'll start your trip in Wellington, and right from there, you'll see the rugged North Island coastline as you head out into open water. You might see different seabirds like gulls and terns, and as you get closer to the South Island, you might spot some gannets. If you're lucky, you could also catch a glimpse of the seal colonies off the coast. During the last hour of the trip, the ferry will slow down, giving you plenty of time to enjoy the green hills and calm waters. You will also approach Queen Charlotte Sound, a spot known for its wildlife. So keep an eye out for orcas, playful dolphins, and even penguins. Honestly, having a ferry instead of a tunnel might not be so bad after all.
To build an underwater structure, you'll need some interesting engineering. A large bridge over a river or bay has its foundation rooted underwater. It's even more complicated with undersea tunnels. Underwater construction is challenging. Engineers need to deal with water pressure and corrosion from salt water. There's also a problem of finding suitable materials. The most typical of them are concrete, steel, and acrylic glass. Concrete doesn't care about water currents and doesn't get damaged by salt water. Steel provides underwater constructions with a strong structure. And acrylic glass is tough, long-lasting, and resistant to sunlight. It's also transparent. That's why it's often used to make windows in underwater buildings. Anyway, when the water is shallow, it's not that hard to build something there. Constructors create a temporary foundation. Then, on top of it, they build several piers supporting the upper structure. But if the waters are deep, engineers have to use other methods. Depending on which one they choose, water is either extracted or diverted during the construction process. One such method involves using a set of large driven piles. Those are long, thin columns made mostly of steel, but their interior is partially hollow. With the help of a huge hammer, they get driven into the waterbed, like nails are driven into a piece of wood. After that, these steel columns get filled with concrete through a special tube. The concrete displaces the water that was in the pile before. Concrete has the ability to set even when it's surrounded by water. That's why driven piles eventually turn into a stable foundation for overwater and underwater constructions. Driven piles are a very cost-effective way of building something that has to be fixed in place. They prevent things from being moved by the water current. Another way to build underwater structures is cofferdams. They are built temporarily and allow workers to create a dry space for the construction. The water gets pumped out of this enclosure, and the cofferdam works like a dam. A completed cofferdam looks like a massive pit with high walls surrounded by water. Cofferdams are made of rocks, steel, and even dirt. These constructions can be built fast and removed even faster. But the process of putting up a cofferdam is complicated and challenging for engineers. They have to make sure the structure won't flood or collapse. The simplest way to build a cofferdam is to pile up loads of dirt. But in this case, workers usually have to somehow make the construction stronger. It helps to protect it from the damage caused by water. Once the cofferdam is ready, pumps extract the water from its interior. Sometimes it's too expensive to build a very deep and strong cofferdam. In this case, constructors use several powerful pumps that get rid of excess water when it seeps through the cofferdam walls. If a cofferdam starts to fail, this process is slow and, luckily, predictable. On the construction site, there are not only main but also backup pumps. In case of emergency, they can kick into overdrive. Then, the water is kept out for the time the personnel needs to evacuate. Cofferdams are most often used during the construction of dams and bridges. But when a large ship, like a modern cruise liner, needs to be repaired, engineers use cofferdams too. Such vessels are too massive to be hauled ashore, and a cofferdam makes a perfect dry lock. The ship gets isolated from the water, and mechanics can repair it wherever it sits. Also, when a cruise ship needs to be expanded, engineers construct a cofferdam around it. Then they pump out all the water from the inside, creating a dry working place. The ship gets cut into 2 parts, and the process of its lengthening begins. There are several main types of cofferdams: braced, cellular, rock-filled, or earthen. For each of them, engineers need to figure out the best depth at which the wall should be put into the ground. It depends on the type of soil and the water reservoir itself. Braced cofferdams are mostly used during shallow water construction. Such a structure is actually a wall of sheet piles. Those are parts with interlocking edges. Usually, they're made of steel, but the material can also be reinforced concrete or timber. Sheet piles create something like a box around the needed area. Cellular cofferdams are also made of sheet piles, but in this case, the piles have a special shape. After being connected, they form cells that get filled with soil or clay. The cells, in turn, create a watertight wall. Thanks to its structure, it's exceptionally stable. Rock-filled cofferdams are used when there's a lot of rock at the construction site. They're built over the soil. This prevents the water from seeping into the cofferdam, and the rocks serve as reinforcement. Earthen cofferdams are built in areas where the water is less than 10 feet deep. They're created from the materials that are at hand: clay, sand, and even soil. There are also single-walled and double-walled cofferdams. The first type is used when the area of the construction isn't large and the depth is more than 20 feet. Such cofferdams are typically necessary for building bridges. Timber or wooden sheets are put into the sea or riverbed. After that, iron or steel sheets are added on the inside. On both sides of the wall, workers place half-filled bags of sand. Finally, the water gets pumped out and the cofferdam is ready for use. The double-walled cofferdam is used for large construction areas and when the water is very deep. Such construction sites need more powerful supports. This stronger cofferdam has two walls, which provides it with extra stability. Two piles get pushed into the waterbed with some space in between. The deeper it is, the bigger the space between the walls. Then they get attached to each other. After that, this space gets filled with soil. Cofferdams aren't cheap. This means that if one is used for a project, there are no other available options. For example, it's the best way to construct permanent dams. When the Hoover Dam was built, several cofferdams were put up to divert the water from the Colorado River. As soon as the project is finished, the water is pumped back into the cofferdam, and its walls, whatever they are, get removed. One more way of underwater construction is caissons. They're watertight structures that are put into the water. Even open, they remain dry inside. Workers can keep digging down until they reach some solid surface. That's where the caisson will be placed upon. What's so different about caissons is that they eventually become parts of the foundation for, let's say, a bridge or a dam. And even though you might not think of a bridge or a dam as an underwater construction, most of their crucial elements are underwater. For example, a large bridge wouldn't be able to hold its weight without massive supporting towers, and they stand in the water. There are several types of caissons: open, pneumatic, and box. Open caissons have no bottom. They're actually just vertical walls that allow builders to dig at the bottom of them. Pneumatic caissons keep the water from seeping through by using compressed air. This helps to maintain equal pressure inside and outside the construction. When workers dig out some materials, these get sent up through a special muck tube. When the caisson reaches the bedrock, workers fill it with concrete. Unlike others, a box caisson has a floor, and workers lower it onto a foundation that is constructed in advance. During the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge, engineers used two massive caissons. Thanks to them, they reached the bedrock and created the foundation for the towers of the bridge. And then there's also off-site construction. That's when things are not only built, but also assembled away from the site. In this case, engineers often use modular construction. That's when factory-produced building units are delivered to the site. There, they get assembled, like a giant Lego set. Structures are then usually floated to the site on huge barges, or they get towed there. After that, they're lowered in place. Some sink under their own weight. Others can only reach the seafloor after getting loaded with additional weights. This method of construction is rather expensive, and still, it's much more cost-effective than building right underwater. The latter needs skilled engineers and unique tools, and don't forget about the risks. But what about underwater tunnels? How on earth are they constructed? Modern tunnels are usually built with the help of massive tunnel boring machines. They even have a nickname: moles. Even though such a mechanism has an exorbitant price, several $1 million, it needs little time to create a long tunnel. The machine moves forward very slowly. It has a special circular plate with rotating disc cutters. They can easily chew through solid rock. The rock is then dropped onto an outboard conveyor belt. Another mechanism uses this rock to construct the tunnel's lining in the mole's wake. This way, the mole not only excavates the tunnel, but also reinforces the walls that will later support it. This method, and 11 huge tunnel boring machines, was used to build the 32-mile-long Channel Tunnel, and the whole process took only 3 years. Cut and cover is another method of creating a tunnel underwater. First, workers dig a trench in the ocean floor or riverbed. Then, they put concrete or steel tubes there, made in advance. After the tubes get covered with a thick layer of rock, the sections are connected. All workers have to do is pump out the water. That's how the Ted Williams Tunnel, connecting Logan Airport with South Boston, was built. There, they used 12 enormous steel tubes, more than 300 feet each, and the tubes contained already fully constructed roads. If you ever fly over the deserts of southern Peru, you'll notice distinct white lines against the rusty red background. Look closer, and you'll see some clear shapes. Straight lines, rectangles, triangles, swirls. It seems like they're parts of huge drawings. You notice a monkey, a whale, a condor, a hummingbird, and whatnot. The lines were created more than 2,000 years ago by the people of the Nazca culture. Thanks to a dry climate and strong winds in the desert, most of the Nazca lines are visible today. To create them, the Nazca people removed the top layer of pebbles and revealed the soil beneath the ground. The color of the soil changes from reddish-brown to yellowish-gray, so the lines always look different. It looks like the creators of the lines started with small-scale models and increased the proportions to create full-scale designs. Scientists have tried to decipher the meaning of the Nazca lines ever since they were first discovered in the 1920s. But the first mention of the lines was actually much earlier, in the 16th century Chronicle of Peru, where they were described as trail markers in the desert. Since you can't really study the lines and their symbolism from the ground, the lines became world famous only in the 1930s with the advent of commercial planes. A decade later, American professor Paul Kosak was doing his research on the lines and noticed one interesting thing. When he looked up from the line, it was pointing directly at the setting sun. It happened one day after the winter solstice, and the scientists concluded that the lines must be the largest astronomy book in the world. German scientist Maria Reiche, who got the nickname the Lady of the Lines, supported the theory that the geoglyphs served as a calendar and had some sort of astronomical purposes. She dedicated 40 years of her life to studying the lines and swept them inch by inch. She also moved into a small house close to the lines to protect them from unwanted visitors. Then in the 1970s, American researchers called the astronomy-related theory into question. They noted that in a region like Nazca, one of the driest places on Earth with only around 20 minutes of rain per year, water is a real treasure, and the straight lines and trapezoids must have had something to do with it. They could be pointing at locations for rituals that the local people organized to obtain water and make crops more fertile. The images of animals in the Andes region are also related to water. Spiders are thought to be a sign of rain. Hummingbirds stand for fertility, and monkeys living in the Amazon symbolize an abundance of water. In more recent years, the Nazca lines have become the research ground for archaeologists from Yamagata University. They're using high-resolution aerial photography and drones to discover and catalog geoglyphs. The team has identified a total of 358 geoglyphs so far, and 168 out of them in 2022 alone. They found images of humans, camelids, birds, orca whales, cats, and snakes, most likely created between 100 BCE and 300 CE. Some of the images are around 10 to 20 feet long, so it's no wonder no one was able to detect them before. The largest geoglyphs, by comparison, are 1,200 feet across, which is about the height of the Empire State Building. The researchers believe the Nazca lines were used as a form of communication in the desert. The linear ones pointed the direction from valley to valley. The ones drawn on slopes seem to have been drawn along ancient pathways between settlements. The scientists now plan to find patterns in the geoglyphs depending on their distribution. They use artificial intelligence to analyze the images. The AI generates designs that are likely to be painted in the desert. and the team then checks if they're actually among the Nazca lines. Another famous Peruvian geoglyph is a candelabra, slightly taller than the Washington Monument. You can find it on a seaside hill in the Paracas Peninsula. Researchers managed to establish the approximate age of the candelabra by analyzing the nearby artifacts. It looks like it dates back to around 200 BCE. The drawing is etched deep into the sand, and it was never meant to look like a candelabra. One theory says that the drawing was supposed to resemble the trident of an Incan deity to please it. Another popular theory is that sailors used it as a beacon for navigation. Effigy Mounds National Monument on the Mississippi River has 195 known Native American mounds. Most of them are conical in shape, and there are also several that look like birds, deer, turtles, bears, and panthers. Scientists have established that the mounds date back to around 450 BCE, and the images are somewhat younger. A study of the mounds found some copper, bone, and stone tools. The builders' descendants say that the mounds served as ceremonial sites. This story is passed down from generation to generation. Some historians believe the mounds could have been also used to mark celestial events or territories. The American Southwest and the nearby regions of Mexico have over 300 intaglios, which are giant images engraved in the ground. The most famous of them are the Blythe intaglios in California, west of the Colorado River. Blythe giants are a group of 6 figures, including that of a human being and an animal. Scientists believe the images are somewhere between 450 and 2,000 years old. According to the local Mojave tribe, there is an image of Mustamho, the creator of life. The animal figure shows a mountain lion who served as his helper. The largest figure is almost as tall as the Leaning Tower of Pisa. The creators of the intaglios had to scrape the dark rock of the desert until the lighter soil showed up. It's nearly impossible to notice them from ground level. That's why they were only discovered in the 1930s, when a pilot flying over them accidentally looked down. The best way to see the giants is still from a helicopter. Kazakhstan can boast its own Nazca lines, a cluster of around 260 earthworks in the north of the country. The steppe geoglyphs are a variety of geometric shapes, including squares, crosses, circles, and a 3-pronged design. The creators of the images used materials such as dirt, rocks, and lumber to build them out of the ground. A local economist first spotted the geoglyphs while browsing Google Earth in 2007. Archaeologists suppose that the structures go back 8,000 years, but they still don't know who built them or why. One theory says that the lines helped track the sun's movement. NASA got interested in the discovery since the lines are much older than the ones in Peru. They took photos of the steppe geoglyphs from space, trying to solve their mystery. Another fact that makes the lines so special is how huge they are. One of the largest of them has sides as long as an aircraft carrier. The only humans who could have built them must have been the nomadic Stone Age tribes, but it's unlikely that they had such advanced tools. If they did, that would mean that archaeologists need to rethink the abilities of our long-ago ancestors. Organizing such a huge amount of people to work together on a complicated project is an amazing feat. Although the white horse on a lush green hill in Oxfordshire, England, could easily pass for modern art, it's actually one of the most ancient geoglyphs. It was created between the Bronze and Iron Ages and is the oldest chalk-cut hill figure in Britain. Whoever created it had to remove the turf to reveal the chalky white part of the soil. Scientists can only guess why this piece of art was created. It could have been a fertility symbol or a way to mark territory. Aerial images prove that the horse has changed over time because of the soil. It took several centuries to reveal a larger horse-like shape that lies under what we see now.
This catapult-like system on the moon might bring us limitless energy. It's a launch system concept that was recently proposed by the Chinese scientists. It would work like a hammer throw, spinning a launch arm that flings objects. This arm is supposed to be about 165 feet long. It will accelerate until it reaches the moon's escape velocity, and then whoosh! The capsule is sent into space. This crazy idea will cost around $18 billion. Ooh, pricey. But trust me, it's totally going to be worth it. The system would be powered by solar panels and nuclear energy. It could also recover more than 70% of the energy used after each launch. The moon has a very weak gravity. There's also barely any atmosphere, so the air doesn't weigh you down. This makes it so much easier to launch stuff there. But why do we even need this? The main purpose is to transport helium-3. It's a really cool isotope of helium, and one of the most insane things about it is that it could become fuel for nuclear fission. This is the same process that happens in stars, including our Sun. If we manage to recreate nuclear fusion here, on Earth, we can make it a clean and basically limitless source of energy for power plants. But helium-3 is super rare on Earth. We can sometimes find it in volcanic rock formations on the ocean floor. That's because it's a product of another rare element called tritium, the element we usually make in nuclear reactors and put in cool stuff like glow-in-the-dark paint. But the catch of tritium is that it takes forever to decay and turn into helium-3. Now, there's a bunch of helium-3 on the moon, around 1 million tons. Just 20 tons of helium-3 could meet China's yearly electricity needs. In fact, lunar soil has enough helium-3 to power the entire world for over 1,000 years. But why is there so much of helium-3 on the moon and barely none on our planet? Well, that's because helium-3 comes from the sun and travels in solar winds. Solar winds are like streams of dangerous particles. They're super radioactive. Our planet's thick atmosphere and magnetic field serve as a shield for us. They almost fully protect us from those particles. But, unfortunately, they also prevent the good stuff like helium-3 from getting here. The moon's atmospheric shields are super thin though, so it's under a constant shower of solar winds. So, helium-3 accumulated there over billions of years, and now it's just scattered around there. But mining it and bringing back to Earth is no easy feat. It's super expensive. Just think about it. Rockets need tons of fuel to break free from gravity. Every single bolt and screw on the spacecraft must be engineered to survive extreme conditions, like radiation. Not to mention, you need a team of rocket scientists, literally working around the clock to make sure nothing goes wrong. You can't call a repair guy if something breaks on the moon. So generally, it costs about $500,000 to send 1 pound of payload to our satellite. That's based on estimates from NASA. To get some idea, let's calculate how much it would cost to send an apple to the moon. A typical apple weighs about 0.4 pounds, so that funny mission would be at least $200,000. Now, for comparison, the Chinese launch system weighs around 80 tons. Another problem is that the lunar surface is pretty harsh on the equipment, like the freakish lunar dust, for example. You might recall this small thing that happened in the 60s called the moon landings. But when the Apollo astronauts came back from the moon, they found something weird was happening to them. Their throats were sore and their eyes wandered. Luckily, it wasn't some scary moon sickness. Turns out, there's a lot of lunar dust clinging to their spacesuits. This dust seems harmless, but it's made up of sharp and abrasive particles, much smaller than a human hair, yet sharp like glass. It contains silicate, a thing that can cause severe lung problems on Earth and is a common issue for miners. So it caused a lunar hay fever. At least that's how NASA astronaut Harrison Schmitt called it. All 12 astronauts who walked on the moon were then sneezing and experiencing nasal congestion. Sometimes it took days to fade away. The dust even got inside their spacecraft, smelling like burnt gunpowder. This nasty stuff can be harmful to both humans and equipment. It managed to damage spacesuit boots and even ruin the seals on the containers used to bring back samples during the Apollo missions. As we mentioned, they're glass-sharp and jagged, so they start scratching, grinding, and wearing down any surfaces they come in contact with. They don't care if it's metal, glass, or humans. And since there's so much dust, this causes equipment to malfunction and fail quite quickly. And that's just one of the possible hurdles with lunar missions. So scientists really need to come up with some weird ideas to get that precious helium-3. The Chinese scientist project looks like a weird sci-fi invention, but it's a cost-effective way to transport materials back to us. It could throw stuff to Earth twice a day, and it would be 90% cheaper than current methods. Since it only needs electricity and no fuel, the system would be small and easy to set up. Besides the beloved helium-3, this catapult would also help advance technologies in space mining and heavy launch vehicles. No lunar dust scares this thing. It should last for at least 20 years. It would need to be transported to the moon using China's Super Heavy Lift rocket. But the idea is far from new. There was a novel called The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert A. Heinlein. In the story, there's a lunar colony that uses an electromagnetic catapult to send weed and water ice back to Earth. It gets quite wild when the colonists, known as loonies, eventually take control of this catapult. They threaten to launch rocks at Earth unless their colony is recognized as an independent world. Sounds kind of funny, but a large rock, if thrown at us from the moon, could wipe out a city. The damage would be like from a meteorite strike, with fires, houses destroyed, and worse. But scientists have been talking about this catapult idea for a while. For decades, they were trying to find a way to use electromagnetic systems to send resources from the moon to Earth. There are also some challenges. For example, scientists forgot to mention how exactly helium-3 would be extracted from the lunar soil. Installing this launch system on the moon's rugged surface would be difficult as well. Also, they would need to make sure that the system remains stable at high speeds and that it could withstand the moon's extreme temperature changes, cosmic rays, and intense solar radiation. So, it would take some time to develop. China hopes to have the key components of the system ready by 2030. The full-scale operations might start by 2045. China has tons of plans for the moon. For example, they want to build a research station at its south pole by 2035. But China's not the only one in this space race. Considering that NASA plans to send humans on Mars by that time, oh boy, the 2030s will be a crazy decade for space exploration. There's also an American startup that's part of the lunar economy. The ones that plan to land astronauts on the moon have people actually living on our satellite in a decade or two. One of the goals of this colony is to boost economic growth and create new jobs. Most of them will likely involve some mining activities. And if there'd be 2 space colonies, well, they'll have to figure something out.
It's one small step for man, giant leap for mankind.
In the late 1950s, everyone was captivated by space exploration. But there was a group of rebels who wondered not what's out there, but what's down there. This team called themselves the American Miscellaneous Society. Yes, that's their real name. And they started one of the biggest projects ever, Project Mahalo. Joyful and determined, they had no idea what a nightmare they started. First, let's understand what the project was about. You probably know that Earth is like a giant onion. If you cut it in half, you'd see it's made of layers. Each one is different from the next. The crust is what we all stand on. It's incredibly thin, like the skin of an apple. It's made of tectonic plates, almost like puzzle pieces, and they float on the layer beneath. That layer is the mantle. It's mostly solid, made of rock, but these rocks flow and move very slowly, just a little bit over thousands of years. They're also incredibly hot, thousands of degrees Fahrenheit, so it's a bunch of scorching stones moving around like caramel syrup. And when the mantle moves, the tectonic plates above move as well. Usually, this movement is slow and harmless. We don't even notice it. But sometimes they can bump into each other, get stuck, and so on. And when they do, they send such horrifying vibrations through the ground that they're hard not to notice. These vibrations are called seismic waves. In 1909, a Croatian scientist, Andrija Mohorovičić, noticed something weird. Turns out, at a certain depth, seismic waves suddenly speed up. He didn't yet realize that he stumbled upon a boundary between the crust and the mantle. It became known as the Moho boundary. Now try to guess what the Project Mahalo guys decided to do. It was during a meeting of the National Science Foundation. Everyone was discussing current scientific progress. Suddenly, Walter Munk, a geophysicist and oceanographer, casually threw out a take that shocked the room. Why not drill all the way down to the mantle? His idea was outrageous. Drill through the ocean floor, deep into the planet's skin, reach the Moho, and see what it's all about. Never mind the fact that the ocean is crazy deep with crushing temperatures and violent currents. Super bold, but not entirely out of nowhere. If we start from the ocean floor, the Moho lies just about 3 to 6 miles below it. It's much easier than starting from land. That would require digging from 10 to 60 miles deep. That made the oceans the best bet for reaching it. Munk wasn't the only one. Harry Hess, one of his colleagues, was just as excited about the time. At the time, people didn't know much about plate tectonics. Hess was one of the founders of that theory, believing that the world is made up of giant moving plates. To him, it was great. Drilling to the mantle would give him evidence to prove that theory. They became a team and found more like-minded scientists. They combined the most brilliant minds in earth science: Roger Revelle, Maurice Ewing, and Arthur Maxwell. They called themselves miscellaneous because there were all sorts of scientists in the team. Poor guys didn't know that their playful name would later come back to haunt them. But the NSF was dumbfounded by their idea at first and rejected it, because duh, it would be a nightmare to pull off. So our team secured $50,000 just to make a plan. Then they presented the official banner. Luckily, science was on the rise, and there were rumors about other countries trying their own deep drilling projects. So, the AMS got the green light this time. The plan consisted of 3 phases. Phase 1. Do a drilling test. Check how things are going. Phase 2. Build an intermediate drilling vessel. Phase 3. Keep going until they reach the Moho. And they got a funding of a whopping $2.5 million. And finally, in March and April 1961, the project finally began. Phase 1 took place off the coast of Guadalupe Island, Mexico. They used a converted barge called Cuss-1 and some insane brain moves to make it work. Originally, Cuss-1 was made for drilling oil offshore. It was one of the best things we had for drilling in deep water. But a catch was that it could only go a few hundred feet down. And remember, we need at least 3 miles. The team had to come up with something revolutionary: dynamic positioning. It's a tech that allowed the ship to stay perfectly still in the middle of the ocean, even without an anchor. It worked like this. They dropped 6 buoys into the water, forming a circle around the ship. These buoys sent underwater echoes to help the ship understand where it's located. Using motors and a joystick, the crew could keep Cuss-1 right in the center of the circle. And surprisingly, they started making progress. Even though ocean drilling is incredibly hard, they drilled through thick layers of sediment and reached an astonishing 600 feet below the seafloor, about 2 Statues of Liberty. And the seafloor itself was almost 12,000 feet deep. This was just the beginning. Deep down, they stumbled upon tons of basalt, a type of volcanic rock. It doesn't surprise us now, but for that time, this achievement was groundbreaking. Turns out they got through Miocene-age sediments, rocks formed millions of years ago. This discovery told us so much about the history of our planet. Now the entire world held its breath. Even the famous writer John Steinbeck, the author of East of Eden and The Grapes of Wrath, got caught up in the excitement. He joined the project and wrote a dramatic article about it for Life magazine. He wrote that we knew less about the ocean floor than we knew about the moon. That line stuck. The biggest surprise was that President John F. Kennedy sent a telegram congratulating the team. It's like the space race turned into inner space, and for a brief moment, it looked like they just might do it. But years later, Walter Munk said that the very success of Phase 1, doomed the project. The early triumph raised expectations sky high. From the start, the miscellaneousness of this society led to tons of disagreements, logistical hurdles, and the costs just kept rising. When the NSF realized just how successful the project was, they took over in 1961. The original society became just an advisor, and this completely screwed things up. One of the scientists said that it was a lengthy and unattractive trail of bickering, bitterness, and short-sightedness. They wouldn't even decide what exactly they wanted to do and whether they even want to reach the moho. After that, the project found the new contractor company, Brown & Root, but it was a political decision, not a scientific one. Brown & Root had no experience in deep-sea drilling at all. Poor scientists had to suffer because this company didn't understand the project's goals and how hard it is. Some scientists even quit because of how annoying that was. As a result, when they calculated how much it would actually take to reach the moho, it turned out to be about $1 billion by today's standards. This shocked absolutely everyone. The public was mocking them, which didn't help at all. Some articles called it Project No Hole and gave titles like How NSF Got Lost in Mohole. The final blow happened in '66. The project's most loyal supporter, Albert Thomas, passed away. Plus, the situation in Vietnam was escalating. As a result, the project was stopped after eating up tens of millions of dollars. What's even worse, this giant, impossible idea took the funding from smaller and achievable things. But it wasn't entirely for nothing. Project Moholo pioneered a new deep-sea drilling technique, which is now standard. They also inspired many new, similar, smaller ideas. And science just kept going since then. In May 2023, scientists finally achieved this dream. They actually pulled up rocks not even from the moho boundary, but from the mantle itself. They got them from the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. So maybe one day we'll be able to drill all the way down there.
Wow! Scientists have achieved quantum teleportation. And you're probably thinking that in the future, you can find yourself on a beach in the Maldives in half a second, getting there right from a snowy village in Finland. Just imagine how much money you'll save on air tickets. But stop. Don't go that far. Scientists have only managed to transfer a piece of quantum information from one quantum computer to another. The distance between them was 6.5 feet. But that piece of information moved as if there was no distance at all. It isn't easy to understand what happened there. To do this, we'll use the most powerful computer in the universe, your brain. So scientists at Oxford have learned how to teleport quantum information. Ordinary information consists of bits, while quantum information consists of qubits. And there's a difference. Imagine a small switch. When it's off, it means 0. When it's on, it means 1. And an ordinary computer works with this information. Qubits represent both 0 and 1 at the same time. That is, until you look at the switch, you don't know if it's on or not. This means that it's in a superposition. And only when you look at it does it take position 1 or 0. So, a quantum computer works with qubits that show superposition. Until you measure a qubit, it's in all positions at once, but after measuring it, it shows 0 or 1. This unique feature allows quantum computers to perform several tasks simultaneously. In the quantum world, if you take an exam, you don't write one task after another. You write all the tasks at the same time. This is the first thing to remember to understand quantum teleportation. The second thing is entanglement. Scientists take two particles and entangle them together. This means that they are now connected. If a certain action occurs with one particle, then the same action occurs instantly with the other. Imagine that you have two pens. One is blue, the other is red. You put each pen in a separate box. You don't know which box has red or blue pens because you can't see them under the closed lid. The pen in one of the boxes can be both red and blue, like Schrödinger's cat. Next, you pick up one box and take it to the Amazon jungle. You also send the second box to the top of Mount Everest. As soon as you open the box in the jungle and see the blue pen, it immediately becomes clear that the pen on Mount Everest is red. That's what happens to entangled particles. For example, if one of the particles at one end of the galaxy turns red, the twin particle at the other end of the galaxy instantly reacts to this and turns blue, as if there was no distance at all. These twin particles sense each other and react instantly. This transfer of a quantum state from one particle to another is quantum teleportation. But scientists have known about this for a long time. What new things have they discovered now? They used quantum teleportation to operate a supercomputer. Ordinary computers use cables, wireless Wi-Fi, and a local area network to communicate with one another. All these things ensure that information is transferred from one computer to another at a very fast speed. But it's not teleportation. Each transmitted bit of information has a speed at which it moves. But now, thanks to this quantum stuff, scientists can teleport this information instead of transmitting it. Right now, quantum computers are very fragile and heavy. Any awkward movement and they can break. But with the help of quantum teleportation, they can be combined into one powerful supercomputer, even if its parts are at a distance from one another. So far, this distance has been 6.5 feet, but scientists continue to experiment. Okay, we've got it. Two particles react to each other as if distance doesn't exist. But what exactly is teleported in a computer? It seems we need to strain our brains a little more. So, the particle is in a superposition. That is, it can be in all states at the same time until you look at it. Like that box with the pen on Everest. And here's what the scientists did. Imagine that you have a particle of light, photon A. This is the photon you want to teleport. You also have photons B and C, which are already entangled. Photon B is located on the first computer. Photon C is located on the second computer. You remember that photons react to each other. That is, if you measure and look at one photon, the second one will immediately feel it and take the appropriate shape. You're not looking at them right now. Just remember this fact. Then, you take photons A and B and make them interact with each other. You measure this interaction using a special device. After that, you look at photon A, and it loses its superposition. The magical property of the particle disappears. Then you send information about the interaction of photons A and B to another computer. Photon C reads this information and takes the form of photon A. The original photon A disappears and photon C becomes photon A. Okay, but how do scientists make particles entangle? And what does it mean to make photon A interact with photon B? They use special crystals and complex technology to make particles entangled. Complicated scientific things are also used to create the interaction between photons A and B, but let's not overload our brains with these things. Time to take stock. Here's a quick retelling of what happened. Photon A is the one we want to teleport. Photons B and C are entangled in advance. They're like twins. A and B interact with each other. We read A. This information is transmitted to C. C becomes the copy of A, and A disappears. In 2002, scientists managed to teleport a laser beam this way. In 2006, they teleported information from a laser into a cloud of atoms. Don't ask, it already sounds very difficult. In 2012, they teleported a photon from one end of the city to the other. And now, scientists have been able to teleport the quantum state of a qubit between two computers. If this technology develops further, scientists will be able to replace parts in computers without disassembling them. For example, you have something broken in the processor inside a quantum computer. You don't need to dismantle the entire computer, remove the processor, and put a new one in there and put the pieces back together. Thanks to quantum teleportation, the processor can be replaced instantly inside the computer. Okay, this all sounds pretty complicated, but the main question is, will people be able to teleport? There are some problems here. People are much more complex than one particle because every human consists of trillions of particles. In addition, a quantum teleportation model on a human would look like this. Every particle inside every atom, inside every molecule of your entire body is measured in the Alps. All this information is then sent to the pyramids of Giza. And there, based on this information, your double appears, and your body in the Alps gets destroyed. Visually, this is teleportation. You disappear in one place and your identical copy materializes in another. But this moment with the destruction of your original self is a little scary, isn't it? Are our memories, our reactions to certain events, our thinking patterns, our feelings, our experiences, are all these also inside subatomic particles? If we look at ourselves through the prism of the quantum world, will we see only the physical body? What about our spiritual world? Is it possible to equate it with the particle world? Or is it something different? In this case, teleportation with the destruction and appearance of a copy in another place won't work. Yes, another you can teleport to another location, but will it be the real you? And where is the guarantee that after teleportation, some part of you will not be lost? What if you lose a piece of yourself again during further teleportation? I'd say trains and planes look much safer at the moment.
Ooh, lava explosions, dramatic collapses, entire waterfall disappearing. Hey, what's going on? Well, iconic landmarks disappear for all sorts of reasons. Guaira Falls, for example, used to be one of the loudest, most powerful waterfalls on the planet, more than 3 times the volume of Niagara Falls in New York. It was located on the border between Brazil and Paraguay and had this insane flow of 3.5 million gallons of water per second. But in the 1970s, the authorities of both countries decided to build the Itaipu Dam, which now supplies a large amount of electricity to Brazil. Renewable energy is great, but it became possible at the cost of one of Earth's greatest natural wonders. The Guaira Falls became covered by the rising water from the reservoir and disappeared for good. Hundreds of people gathered to say their goodbyes and held a proper local ritual of remembrance for the deceased in the memory of the falls. So next up, we have a Game of Thrones favorite, the Azure Window in Malta. This gorgeous limestone jutted out into the Mediterranean as early as the 19th century. It was born thanks to the sea erosion of a limestone cliff face. Between the 1980s and the 2000s, parts of the top slab of the arch already collapsed, and fishers wouldn't come close to it in their boats. But it didn't stop the tourists, who would still walk across the top, even though everyone knew the arch was eroding fast. In March 2017, during a heavy storm, the whole thing collapsed into the sea. Just like that, a 92-foot masterpiece of nature crumbled in seconds. Now, no one was hurt, but the island of Gozo lost its most famous landmark forever. Now, only underwater divers can admire the ruins. Our next destination, the pink and white terraces of New Zealand, were natural staircases that formed thanks to mineral-rich water pouring down volcanic rock. Once the water hit the cooler air, those minerals hardened really fast, kind of like how sugar turns into rock candy when it cools. That same process is still happening today in places like Yellowstone, with all those steaming geysers and colorful but deadly hot pools. At the White Terraces, boiling hot water full of silica bubbled out of a crater about 100 feet above a lake. It flowed down over around 50 huge curved steps. Across the lake, the pink terraces were a little smaller, but still amazing. Their colors probably came from different minerals in the water or even tiny microbes living there that added some flair. You could soak in the terraces like hot tubs, but make it 19th century and magical. Then, in 1886, Mount Tarawea erupted. Ash, lava, earthquakes, and the terraces vanished, either buried under layers of ash or sunk to the bottom of Lake Rotomahana. Hey, I got that right. Meanwhile, for over a century, people thought they were gone forever. But in 2011, someone said they found parts of the terraces under the lake. So maybe they're not entirely gone, but just hiding. Peekaboo. If you've seen The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio, you definitely know this place, Maya Bay on Pipilay Island in Thailand. After that movie dropped in 2000, the place went viral. Before viral was even a thing. Soon, thousands of tourists arrived every day with speedboats, sunscreen, plastic trash, all that sort of stuff, which wrecked the coral reef. And in 2018, Thai authorities decided it was time to shut the bay down. After a 4-year recovery, Maya Bay reopened in 2022, but with big-time restrictions. Boats can't come directly in, swimming is limited, and the number of tourists is capped daily. Plus, they now close the idyllic location during the less popular rainy season to let the natural resources and ecosystems recover. So yeah, it's technically back, but the wild original version of Maya Bay is gone for good. Meanwhile, once upon a time, there was a giant cliff face in New Hampshire, which looked exactly like an old man's profile. See? There was a jaw, forehead, and even a nose. That was called the young woman on the porch. No, not really. It was the old man of the mountain, made of granite ledges perched on Cannon Mountain in Franconia Notch. With some severe freezing and thawing after the retreat of glaciers 12,000 years ago, the rock took the shape of that face, 40 feet tall and 25 feet wide. People first wrote about it in the early 1800s, and it became a symbol of New Hampshire. It even appears on license plates and the state quarter. But even with all that public love and many attempts to patch the cracks with steel rods, cement, and chains, the face couldn't last forever. Sometime between midnight and 2 a.m. on May 3, 2003, it collapsed and was gone forever. A geologic facelift, I would call it. Today, you can visit Profiler Plaza and see the recreation of the profile on the cliff across from Profile Lake. Now, the most isolated tree in the world stood alone in the middle of the Sahara Desert in Niger. The tree of Tenere was literally the only tree for 250 miles in any direction. For centuries, nomads used it as a natural compass that helped them cross the harsh desert. Its roots stretched unbelievably deep to reach underground water, and it was staying alive in a place where nothing else could grow. The lonely tree survived desert heat, wind, and droughts for centuries, until a truck driver knocked it down in 1973. Yep, the dunderhead managed to hit the only standing thing in the middle of nothing. Perhaps the driver thought the tree was jaywalking or something. Anyway, you can now see some twisted remains of the tree in a museum, and a metal sculpture stands in its original place. Now, another tree, this time not lonely at all, stood as tall as a 23-story building in Yosemite National Park. You see, at the end of the 19th century, two men managed to cut a tunnel right through the 26-foot base of this giant sequoia. It was all part of a campaign to promote automobile tourism and bring more visitors to the park. And it worked. The Wawona Tunnel Tree became a real tourist magnet. I mean, who wouldn't want to have their photo taken in a car driving through a big tree? But sadly, this beauty fell in 1969 under a heavy load of snow. It was around 2,300 years old at that time. You can still see it in the same spot where it fell. Look up the fallen tunnel tree. Now for a change, let's take a look at a couple of human-made landmarks. New York's current Penn Station does its job pretty well, but the original one was 10 leagues above it when it came to beauty. Built in the fancy Beaux Arts style, it had massive domes, tall archways, and elegant columns. It used to welcome over 100 million travelers every year, especially in its heyday during the mid-1940s. But things changed. By the late 1950s, people were flying more and driving on the brand-new interstate highways, rather than by train. Then, in 1962, the city decided to build a new Penn Plaza and the Madison Square Garden Arena. Just 1 year later, they tore down the original Penn Station so they could squeeze a smaller version underground. The New York Times called it, quote, a monumental act of vandalism against one of the greatest landmarks of that elegant Roman-inspired era. Now, back on the Pacific Coast. The Sutro Baths opened in San Francisco in 1896. It was a 3-acre glass building packed with 7 different swimming pools, all with different temperatures. It had springboards, high dives, water slides, and even trapezes dangling over the water. And it could handle serious crowds, up to 10,000 people at once. There was also a natural history museum with Egyptian mummies and a sculpture gallery filled with artifacts from Mexico and China. It was definitely a one-of-a-kind playground, but there was also one major problem. It cost a fortune to run. Even during the Great Depression, when the owners turned the pools into ice skating rinks to try to stay afloat, the place still didn't make enough money. The baths finally shut down in 1964, and 2 years later, a fire burned it to the ground. Oh well. For decades now, people have been dreaming of exploring space. And since the year 2000, there has indeed been a continuous presence of people in space. And recently, a new record has been set. Just a couple of weeks ago, there were 17 people from 5 different countries in Earth's orbit at the same time. The previous record was set in September 2021 during the privately funded Inspiration 4 mission. At that time, the number of people in orbit reached 14. So let's see. Just recently, 3 more people have arrived at China's Tiangong space station. There were 3 more astronauts aboard the same station, but they've been there since November 2022 and are supposed to return back to Earth in June. Then there are 7 people on board the International Space Station, and 4 more departed the ISS aboard SpaceX's Crew Dragon named Freedom. They successfully returned to Earth on the 30th of May 2023, leaving 13 people in orbit. Interestingly, the current record also includes the 600th person to get into Earth's orbit. Specialist Rayana Barnai from AX-2 mission became a space traveler number 600, as well as the first Saudi woman in space. But I've got something even more exciting to tell you. Oh my! The record for most people in space, and just not in Earth's orbit, was reset not so long ago too. But it lasted for a mere 5 minutes or so. But during this short period of time, there were 20 people off the planet. This record was set when 6 members of the Virgin Galactic Unity 25 Spaceship Two crew happened to be in space at the same time as 3 Chinese taikonauts living and working aboard Tiangong and 11 astronauts on board the International Space Station. Now that's getting crowded. Well, the International Space Station has always hosted the majority of space travelers from Earth. But I bet there are some cool facts about this marvel of technological development you haven't heard yet. The ISS is the 3rd brightest object in the night sky, and the coolest thing? You can sign up for a special service and you'll get a text every time the ISS travels over your location and is visible with the unaided eye. I've seen it dozens of times myself, and it's very, very cool. Normally, you can see it between dusk and dawn, but be ready because the station is very fast. It moves at a speed of 5 miles per second and circles our planet every 90 minutes. The International Space Station is a true record breaker. It's the largest human-made object in space. It's 357 feet long from end to end, which is about the same length as a soccer field. It also weighs about 450 tons. 8 spacecraft can dock at the ISS at the same time. The working and living space of the station is bigger than a 6-bedroom house. Astronauts have 6 sleeping quarters, a gym, 2 bathrooms, and a beautiful 360-degree view from their special bay window. Now to the nitty-gritty. On the ISS, you wouldn't have to deal with lots of disgusting smells. There is a specially trained person who smells everything astronauts take with them in space. It's done to protect them from unpleasant odors. The thing is that you can't really air the room out there if you don't like how it smells inside. That's why NASA is very careful about what kinds of smells are allowed to pass through. You'd also have to get rid of your clothes instead of washing them after each use. To bring a mere 1 pound of load to the International Space Station costs up to $10,000. That's why it's easier to throw your clothes away when they get dirty than to waste water washing them. Now, while sleeping, you'd have exceptionally good airflow around you. Otherwise, the carbon dioxide you'd exhale would form a bubble around your head and you get oxygen deprived, and that's not good. Now, people often think that in space you experience zero gravity, hence the weightlessness astronauts feel on the International Space Station. But that's not exactly true. Gravity is one of the most important forces that exist in the universe. Thanks to it, the Moon can orbit Earth and the Sun doesn't float away from our home Milky Way galaxy. But astronauts on the ISS experience not full-fledged but microgravity, which means itsy-bitsy gravity. Earth's gravity on the space station is not only around 10 to 12% weaker than the gravity on the planet's surface, but astronauts are constantly in free fall. The spacecraft, the people inside, and all the objects aboard keep falling forward, not down, but around our planet, following a specific orbit. And since they're all falling together, the crew and the stuff inside seem to be floating. But our space exploration plans are much more ambitious than just orbiting our planet on board the ISS. We're planning to send a mission to the Moon and build a colony on Mars. Some experts claim that in the next 25 years, around 20,000 people are likely to leave Earth. But how many people would it take to colonize an entire star system? In 2002, anthropologist John Moore from the University of Florida stated that a spaceship with 150 passengers could leave Earth and set off on a several thousand years journey to another star system. And upon arrival, the descendants of the original crew could build settlements in a new world. That seems like a lot of work to me. Let's continue. The nearest star system, Proxima Centauri, is 4.2 light-years away from our home planet. Talking about space, it's just next door. But for us, it's so far that we would need to build a generational spaceship to get us there. But the question is how many people you'd need to send on such a mission to have enough genetic diversity. A new study disagrees with John Moore, claiming it must be way more than 150 people. According to a scientist from Portland State University, a spaceship traveling to such a distant world would have to carry at least 10,000 people. This number might secure the success of the mission. 40,000 people would be even better. Who knows what could happen to the travelers during such a challenging and unprecedented journey? At the moment, NASA isn't ready to send humans even to Mars, let alone a distant solar system. But a few private organizations are working on this project. They hope to make interstellar trips possible in the next century. They count on a huge increase in propulsion speed, which could potentially reduce the travel time between stars to a mere few hundred years. Researchers have built several simulations to figure out how many various scenarios could play out during such an interstellar mission. And they have come to the conclusion that the success of this mission would greatly depend on the size of the starting population. Genetic diversity would keep the travelers healthy. The larger the population is, the more diversity it has. And 150 people is definitely not enough to maintain genetic variations. Even a population of 500 people wouldn't be sufficient enough. At the same time, if we sent to another solar system 40,000 people, we'd be able to maintain 100% of the variation. Even 10,000 travelers would make the scenario relatively stable, which means that any number between 10 and 40,000 people would be a pretty safe bet. But of course, we wouldn't be able to send so many people in space in just one spaceship. We'd have to build many and spread people among them. These ships could be modular, able to dock together for trade and some social gatherings. For the genetic variety, I'm guessing. But they would travel separately, so that if some disaster struck one of them, the rest would remain unharmed. But to make interstellar travel possible, researchers and engineers will have to overcome loads of obstacles. We still need to increase propulsion speed, deal with the negative health effects of living in space, and invent self-sustaining systems providing air, water, and food. Or we could just decide to fix our own planet and stay home. Hey now, get ready to dive into the Sea of Mysteries, also known as the Black Sea. It is the largest inland body of water in the world, bigger than the entire state of California. It has dozens of lost ships and some secret underwater tunnels. And some people believe it's an ancient quarry that was mined out in 6 stages. The Black Sea has distinct vertical layers that don't mix, with higher and lower salinity. The salty water comes from the Mediterranean, and fresh water comes from rivers. 10 of the largest rivers in Europe flow into the Black Sea. It receives more fresh water from the rivers and rainfall than it loses from evaporation. The extra water flows through the Bosphorus into the Marmara Sea. There are 2 flows going through the straits. The upper flow leaves the Black Sea and takes surface water out of it. The bottom flow carries salt water from the Mediterranean to the Black Sea. That's why the upper layers of the Black Sea are less dense than its saltier lower layers. The oxygen that comes from the atmosphere and photosynthesis stays in the surface layers. Everything deeper than about 300 feet in the middle and up to 500 feet near the edge is not fit for life. Only certain bacteria can survive in these conditions. Although there's no air deep down in the Black Sea, the upper layer is home to around 750 species of phytoplankton. Eggs and larvae of fish and invertebrates chill in coastal regions. There are also 180 fish species in the Black Sea, and some of them are valuable, such as horse mackerel, spiny dogfish, and sprat. The water level in the Black Sea is always the same because there are no high or low tides, so the sea is always calm, quiet, and serene on the surface. But it has one surprise feature: an underwater river. It's a current of salty water flowing through the Bosphorus Strait and along the seabed. This amazing discovery was made by scientists from the University of Leeds and was announced in 2010. It's the first undersea river of its kind ever found. The river forms because salty water from the Mediterranean Sea spills through the Bosphorus Strait into the Black Sea, where the water is much less salty. The no-air zone of the sea is an ideal conservation chamber for what's hiding on its bottom. The Black Sea is like a treasure trove for shipwrecks, and we discovered it by accident. Some maritime archaeologists were studying sea levels to see how quickly the water levels rose after the last ice age, and they ran across over 40 previously unknown shipwrecks as a complete bonus. Researchers used 2 remotely operated vehicles to explore the seafloor and the wrecks. Thanks to it, we have a video and detailed 3D images of the ships that were stitched together from thousands of high-resolution photos. According to the New York Times, some of the standout discoveries among the 44 ships found include a medieval training vessel from the 13th or 14th century. Expedition members nicknamed another ship from the Ottoman Empire the Flower of the Black Sea for its beautiful petal carvings. The team also noticed unusual details on other ships, like coiled ropes, chisel marks, rudders, and other carvings. So far, they haven't announced any plans to excavate the shipwrecks, but the ships might be filled with historical treasures like books, parchments, and documents. It's worth a try to rescue them. The most extraordinary discovery in the Black Sea is what archaeologists believe to be the world's oldest intact shipwreck. It has been lying undisturbed for over 2,400 years. This ancient Greek vessel, 75 feet long, was found with its mast, rudders, and rowing benches all still in place, over a mile beneath the surface. Researchers believe the ship was a trading vessel, like those depicted on ancient Greek pottery, such as the Siren vase in the British Museum. This vase, or vase, dating from the same period, shows a vessel carrying Odysseus past the Sirens. The team took a small piece for carbon dating, and the results confirmed it as the oldest intact shipwreck known to humankind. The fact that it's so elaborate and well-preserved deserves a standing ovation for shipbuilders of the ancient world. Without microbes, worms, or other creatures to eat away the wrecks, it's no wonder the ships are in almost perfect condition. If the Titanic had sunk in these waters, we would have found it in a much better state now, not being eaten by nasty underwater microorganisms. Now, there's an interesting theory called the Black Sea Deluge hypothesis, which suggests a huge flood happened around 7,500 years ago. 2 geologists in the 1990s suggested that at the end of the last ice age, when the Earth's climate was heating up, ice sheets were melting and sea levels were rising. The Black Sea was a much smaller freshwater lake. It was separated from the Mediterranean Sea by a natural dam at the Bosphorus Strait. As global sea levels rose, the Mediterranean overflowed into the Black Sea basin. They suggest the sea level rose by 6 inches every day, flooded coastal settlements, and changed the environment for good. Samples from the Black Sea floor show a sudden shift from freshwater to marine species around that time, which means there was a rapid influx of salt water. Underwater surveys have also found what look like the old shorelines and human-made structures. So, people were living in areas now submerged by the Black Sea. Plus, the timing of this flood matches up with known patterns of human migration into Europe, Asia, and Africa. They also say this flood could be the terrible flood from the story of Noah's Ark. Critics of the deluge theory say the evidence isn't as straightforward as it seems. Some think the transition from freshwater to saltwater in the Black Sea was more gradual than one sudden flood. They're also debating if people left the settlements before they went underwater or as a result. An old chronicle that's been around for about a century says there were 2 underground tunnels starting in what is now Romania and Bulgaria and stretching all the way under the Black Sea to Turkey. Back in the day, peasants used these tunnels to move their flocks of sheep to the Ottoman Empire and countries on the Asia Minor Peninsula. Who built these tunnels and why they run under the sea is a complete mystery. At some point, the entrances to these tunnels were sealed off for national security and were under tight guard. The security forces knew all about these massive tunnels and kept them off limits. In the 1980s, a group of people working on the Danube-Black Sea Canal accidentally found another entrance to these mysterious tunnels. This one was in a cemetery in a town of Romania. Canal workers used it to regularly cross over into Bulgaria. One more cool thing about these 2 tunnels is that some people think they were built thousands of years ago. If you ever try to dig a tunnel under the sea, you'll know how tricky it is even now with all the tech we have. So if the tunnels are really that old, whoever built them was super advanced for their time. Now, there's an urban legend that says that the Black Sea has its own version of the Bermuda Triangle. Fishers describe some wild whirlpool that appears out of nowhere and drags entire flocks of birds, ships, and even small islands under the sea. And once, things got even wilder with a ship that vanished under weird conditions in 1944. It was during daylight, and some black fog with green flashing sparkles suddenly surrounded the vessel. No one has ever seen it since, and no one knows for sure if the story is true. But it sure adds a spooky touch to the mysteries of the Black Sea. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.